In the quiet hours before sunrise, when the air is still cool and the world feels half asleep, there is a place along the river that seems to breathe more slowly than everywhere else. It is ancient Egypt, resting beside the long, gentle flow of the Nile. The water moves without hurry, carrying soft reflections of stars that are fading now into early morning light. Along its banks, the land waits in silence, as if it has always known the rhythm of exhaustion and return. In these early moments, before the heat arrives, the villages are quiet in a way that feels almost complete. Mud-brick homes sit close together, shaped by hands that worked carefully and slowly, layer after layer of earth pressed into form. The walls hold the warmth of past days and the coolness of the night. Inside, families are still resting, wrapped in thin cloth, their breathing steady and unhurried. The world outside has not yet asked anything of them. A faint breeze moves across the river and touches the fields. It carries the smell of damp soil and reeds. Farther out, small boats rest against the shore, their wooden frames still wet from yesterday's work. They rock gently, almost unnoticeably, as if even they are resting. The fishermen who use them are still asleep, their bodies heavy with the fatigue of yesterday's current and net. Not far from the riverbanks, the fields stretch out in quiet lines. They are not yet bright with sunlight. They are soft shapes in the dim light, waiting for hands to return to them. The soil is dark and rich, shaped by years of flooding and retreat. It has a memory of water, and it holds it close. Farmers will come soon, but for now, even the fields are still. Inside the village, a few early signs of movement begin, though they are slow and careful. A door opens without sound. A man steps out and pauses, adjusting his eyes to the fading night. He carries the weight of sleep still in his shoulders. His work will begin soon, but not yet. For a moment, he simply stands and listens to the world. There is a quiet routine to this time of day. It does not rush. It does not demand attention all at once. Instead, it unfolds gently, like cloth being unfolded in soft light. People wake in their own time, guided more by habit than by urgency. A mother stirs near a small cooking space, her hands already familiar with the motion of preparing dough. Water is poured slowly. Flour is mixed without thought. These actions are repeated every day, and because of that, they feel almost like breathing. Bread is one of the first comforts of the morning. It is simple and heavy, shaped by hands that have done this many times before. The ovens are not yet fully warm, but they will be soon. Heat will rise from them in steady waves, and the scent of baking will drift through the village like a quiet reminder that the day has begun. Outside, the light begins to change. The sky shifts from deep blue to something softer, something pale and patient. The river reflects this change gently. There is no sudden brightness, only a slow spreading of color across the horizon. The world does not wake all at once. It wakes in layers. Along the edges of the village, animals begin to move. Donkeys step forward with tired patience, their hooves touching the ground in slow rhythm. Chickens scatter lightly across the dirt paths, searching for small signs of food. Even their movements feel calm, as if they too understand the pace of this place. A group of workers gathers near a storage area built from wood and clay. Their bodies show the weight of many days like this one. They do not speak much. Their communication is simple, shaped by shared understanding rather than words. Tools are lifted. Containers are carried. Everything happens without hurry. The day's labor is already waiting for them, but there is still this small space of quiet before it fully begins. Farther along the river, a scribe sits near a shaded wall. The air around him is still cool. He prepares his materials carefully, unrolling a surface and checking the condition of ink and reed. His work is delicate, requiring attention and patience. He will record numbers, deliveries, and instructions. His role is not loud, but it holds importance in the structure of daily life. Even here, in the quietest hour, the idea of order begins to form. The sun continues to rise, but gently. It does not rush over the land. It spreads itself slowly, warming the edges of stone paths and rooftops. Shadows shorten, but not suddenly. Everything changes at a pace that feels natural, almost comforting in its consistency. Inside homes, people finish the last moments of rest. Children are guided softly to wakefulness. There is no sharpness in the morning. Only the gradual return to awareness. Faces appear at doorways. Water is shared. Hands are washed in bowls that have been used countless times before. Soon, the sounds of work will grow stronger. The village will begin to fill with the soft noise of daily effort. But for now, there remains a gentle in-between space. A moment where night has not fully left, and day has not fully taken its place. It is in this space that life feels especially human. Not hurried. Not distant. Just present. A collection of small actions, repeated across time, held together by necessity and rhythm. And as the river continues to move without pause, carrying the memory of countless mornings like this one, the world slowly prepares itself for another day that will feel both familiar and heavy with quiet labor. The village is now fully awake, but not in a sudden way. It is more like a slow unfolding, as if the land itself is stretching after a long rest. The light has grown stronger above the Nile, and the water now reflects a soft gold that moves gently with every small ripple. Boats that were resting along the shore begin to shift as people step inside them, adjusting ropes, checking nets, preparing for another day that will be spent close to the river's steady current. The fishermen move with quiet familiarity. Their hands know the weight of nets even before they lift them. There is no need for many words between them. A glance is enough. A small nod is enough. The river has taught them patience over many years. It does not give easily, and it does not rush. It simply continues, and they have learned to continue with it. As the boats push away from the shore, the sound of water becomes slightly more present. Not loud, but steady. Paddle strokes disturb the surface, creating small patterns that vanish almost as soon as they appear. The men lean forward, their bodies shaped by repetition and effort. The morning air is still cool here, just above the water, but they know it will not stay that way for long. On land, the fields are beginning to fill with movement. Farmers walk slowly along narrow paths between plots of soil. The earth is still cool underfoot. It holds the memory of the river's flooding, the rich deposit left behind after water retreats. This soil is both gift and demand. It gives food, but only through long hours of work. Tools are lifted again and again. Wooden plows are guided carefully through the ground. The motion is steady, almost rhythmic. There is a quiet comfort in repetition, even when the work is heavy. Dust rises in small clouds and drifts away with the morning breeze. Nothing lingers for long. Everything returns to stillness between movements. Along the edges of the fields, children sometimes follow their families. They carry small bundles or watch from a distance, learning without being told. Their presence is quiet. They do not interrupt the rhythm of work. Instead, they grow into it slowly, the way all things here seem to grow without force, without urgency, only through time. Back in the village, the ovens are now fully warm. The air near them feels different, thicker with heat and the smell of baking bread. Flat loaves are placed carefully inside, and soon the scent spreads outward through narrow paths between homes. It reaches doorways, storage spaces, and resting corners. It becomes part of the morning itself. A woman stands near the cooking area, her hands moving with practiced ease. She does not think about each step. She simply follows what has always been done. Water, flour, fire, rest. These are not separate actions but one continuous flow. Around her, others prepare similar tasks. Food is shared, divided, arranged. Nothing is wasted if it can be helped. Everything has its place. The sun climbs higher now. Shadows are shorter and sharper. The coolness of early morning begins to fade, replaced by the first signs of heat. It spreads across the village slowly, touching stone walls, drying the dampness left by night. People adjust without much thought. Cloth is shifted. Work slows slightly where shade is not present. Life continues, but now under a warmer sky. Near a small shaded structure, scribes continue their quiet work. Their world is different from the fields and boats, but still connected to them. Clay tablets, papyrus sheets, marks made with careful hands. Numbers recorded from harvests, deliveries, storage counts. Each symbol carries meaning, not just for today but for what must be remembered tomorrow. The scribes sit still for long periods. Their movement is minimal compared to others, but their attention is deep. They listen to the village in their own way. Not through sound, but through order. Through patterns of goods and labor. Through the quiet structure behind daily life. As midday approaches, the heat becomes more noticeable. The air above the fields begins to shimmer slightly. Workers slow their movements. Not stopping, but adjusting. Rest becomes necessary, even if brief. Under trees or simple cloth coverings, people sit for moments of stillness. Water is shared in small clay cups. Conversation remains soft, often unnecessary. Fatigue is not spoken of loudly here. It is simply understood. Bodies carry it openly. Shoulders lowered, movements slower, breath deeper. The rhythm of the day allows for this. It always has. In the distance, the river continues its steady flow. It does not change with the heat. It does not rush or pause. It remains the same presence it has always been. Boats return slowly to shore as fishermen complete their morning work. Nets are heavy with what the river has offered. The catch is carried carefully, not with excitement, but with quiet acceptance. At the edge of the village, small storage spaces begin to fill. Grain, fish, tools, and woven goods are placed inside carefully. Each item has been earned through hours of labor. Each item will be needed later. Nothing here is separate from survival. Everything connects in a long, quiet chain of effort and use. Children rest in shaded corners, their energy fading under the warmth of the day. Some sleep lightly. Others simply sit and watch. Their world is small but full of detail: dust moving in sunlight, insects crossing the ground, distant sounds of tools and water. The village does not feel divided between work and rest. Instead, it moves between them naturally, like breathing. Inhale of labor. Exhale of pause. Again and again. As the sun reaches its higher point, the heat becomes steady and unavoidable. Yet even then, life does not stop. It adjusts. It softens its edges. Work becomes slower but not absent. The fields continue to be tended. The river continues to be used. The ovens continue to cool slowly after hours of heat. There is a kind of endurance here that does not announce itself. It is not spoken. It is simply lived. Day after day, in the same patterns, under the same sun, beside the same river that has always carried time forward without ever needing to explain where it is going. And so the village continues into the warmer part of the day, carrying with it the weight of routine and the quiet comfort of repetition, as if the world itself has agreed to move at this pace and no faster. The heat of the day settles more deeply now, not as something sudden, but as something that slowly becomes part of everything. The air above the village feels thicker, almost still, as if even movement itself has grown careful. Shadows shrink under rooftops and trees, and the bright sky above the Nile holds a steady, unblinking light. Work does not stop, but it changes its shape. In the fields, farmers continue with slower rhythm. The earlier energy of morning has softened into something quieter, more patient. Hands still guide tools through the earth, but each motion carries less urgency. The soil is warm now at the surface, though beneath it still holds the cool memory of the river. Every movement brings up dust that floats briefly before settling again, as if even the land prefers stillness in this part of the day. Some workers pause under thin coverings stretched between wooden posts. The shade is not perfect, but it is enough to soften the weight of the sun. They sit close to the ground, resting arms and shoulders that have already carried many hours. Water is shared slowly, not rushed. Each sip is taken with care, as though even water deserves attention in such heat. The village feels quieter during these hours, but not empty. It is a different kind of fullness. The sounds that remain are smaller now. A distant hammering from a workshop. The low rustle of baskets being moved. The occasional call between workers that fades quickly into the warm air. Near the river, the water continues its steady movement, untouched by the intensity of the sun above. It flows as it always has, carrying light and reflection without effort. Along its edges, reeds bend gently. Small birds rest in shaded spots close to the surface, occasionally dipping into the water before settling again. Even the riverbank seems to breathe more slowly now. Boats that were active earlier are now tied loosely along the shore. Their wooden sides creak faintly with the shifting of water. Nets hang heavy and still, drying in the heat. The fishermen have returned to land, sitting near storage areas or resting in shaded corners of their homes. Their bodies carry the quiet fatigue of the morning, a tiredness that feels familiar rather than sharp. Inside the village, life continues in softer forms. Homes made of mud brick hold the heat differently than stone or wood. Their walls absorb the sun and release it slowly. Inside, the air is still warmer than the morning, but more protected. People move with less effort. Tasks are done slowly, almost gently. Cleaning, sorting, preparing small meals for later. Nothing is hurried because nothing needs to be. A woman sits near a doorway, weaving with steady hands. The threads move through her fingers with practiced rhythm. Each motion is small, repeating over and over. Her attention is calm, focused not on time but on process. Beside her, a child lies resting on woven mats, eyes half closed, drifting between wakefulness and sleep. Farther inside the village, the scribes remain at their work, though even their pace seems softened. The ink dries quickly in the heat. The papyrus is handled carefully to avoid damage. Records are made with steady precision, but pauses between entries grow slightly longer. Even knowledge itself seems to pause in this part of the day, as if waiting for the heat to ease before continuing. In the workshops, craftsmen continue shaping wood, stone, and clay. Their tools move with familiar repetition. A hammer striking, a blade smoothing, a hand guiding material into form. These spaces are not loud, but they carry a steady rhythm that blends into the background of the village. Even when slowed by heat, the work continues because it is part of the same long cycle that never fully stops. Outside, the brightness of the sun remains constant, but the world beneath it has adjusted. Animals rest more often. Donkeys stand still in whatever shade they can find. Chickens gather in loose groups, their movement minimal. Even insects seem to hover more lazily in the air, drifting rather than darting. There is a feeling during this time that the entire land is holding itself gently, waiting for the sun to shift again. By mid-afternoon, the heat reaches its quiet peak. It is not dramatic. It does not arrive with force. Instead, it settles in fully, as if completing something that began long before. The ground feels warm underfoot. The air carries a steady weight. Even sound seems slightly softened, as though the world is speaking in a lower tone. Most labor pauses now, not entirely, but enough to allow rest. People remain within shaded areas, homes, or covered spaces near the fields. Bodies lean into stillness. Some sleep lightly. Others simply sit with eyes closed, breathing slowly, letting the heat pass over them without resistance. This is not a time of activity. It is a time of endurance. And yet, there is something deeply ordinary about it. Something expected. The rhythm of the day has always contained this pause. It is not unusual. It is simply part of how life moves here. Along the river, the water continues its unchanging path. Its surface reflects the bright sky in soft patterns. Occasionally, a boat will shift slightly where it is tied, but otherwise everything remains still. The river does not participate in the heat. It continues its slow presence, carrying both memory and movement at once. In one quiet corner of the village, an elderly man sits outside a home, watching the light change across the ground. His posture is relaxed, his hands resting loosely in his lap. He is not doing anything in particular, yet his presence feels connected to everything around him. He has seen many days like this. Many seasons of heat and harvest. For him, the rhythm is not something to think about anymore. It is simply what the world is. As the afternoon continues, the light begins to soften slightly at its edges. Not yet cooler, but less sharp. The transition is slow, almost unnoticeable at first. Shadows begin to stretch again, very gradually. The village remains in its quieter state, but there is a subtle sense that change is approaching. People begin to stir again, slowly returning from rest. Not all at once, but in small groups. A hand lifting to adjust cloth. A door opening quietly. A voice speaking softly to call someone back to movement. The cycle continues, as it always does. And the village, shaped by labor, heat, water, and repetition, prepares itself without urgency for the return of evening, when movement will once again feel lighter, and the air will begin to carry the memory of coolness back into the land. The afternoon begins to loosen its grip slowly, almost without notice at first. The light that once pressed heavily across the land starts to soften at its edges. It is still bright, still warm, but no longer as sharp as before. The village senses this change in the quiet way it always does, not through sudden awareness, but through small shifts in feeling. People begin to move again. Not quickly, not all at once, but in a gentle return to motion. A hand pushes aside a resting cloth. A door opens and stays open this time. Voices rise softly, calling across short distances. The stillness of midday does not disappear, but it begins to break apart in pieces, like something slowly releasing its hold. In the fields, workers step back out into the open air. The soil is still warm, but easier now to face. Tools are lifted again. Movements return to their steady rhythm, though more slowly than in the morning. There is no rush. Only continuation. The work was never truly stopped, only paused, and now it resumes as if it had been waiting patiently for this exact moment. The river remains unchanged in its presence, but the light upon it begins to shift. Gold softens into a paler tone. The reflections stretch longer across the surface. Small ripples catch the light differently now, no longer harsh, but gentle and wide. Boats that had rested near the shore are touched again. Hands check ropes, adjust positions, prepare for short evening movements. Not the full work of morning, but smaller tasks: transport, return, preparation for tomorrow. The river is never fully left alone. It is always part of the day, even in its quietest hours. Inside the village, the air begins to feel lighter. Heat still remains, but it no longer presses so closely. People step outside again, gathering in shaded paths, speaking in low voices. There is a sense of easing, like the body remembering how to move after stillness. Bread ovens are quiet now, their heat slowly fading into warm stone. The scent of baking is still present, but softer, lingering in corners and cloth. Food prepared earlier is shared in small portions. Simple meals, eaten without hurry, as if the act of eating itself is part of the rhythm of the land. Children reappear in open spaces, their energy returning as the sun lowers. They move slowly at first, then more freely. Dust rises under small steps. Their voices remain soft compared to the brightness of their movement. Even play here feels connected to the quietness of the village, never too loud, never separated from the surrounding calm. In the workshops, craftsmen return to their tools. Wood is shaped again, stone smoothed further, clay adjusted with wet hands. The afternoon light filters through small openings in walls, touching surfaces in long, warm lines. Every object seems to carry a glow that belongs only to this time of day. Scribes continue their records, now with slightly more ease. The heat that once slowed ink and thought begins to ease. Words are formed more smoothly again. Records of grain, tools, labor, and movement are written carefully, as they always are. There is comfort in this repetition, in the knowledge that everything has its place and will be remembered. Along the riverbank, fishermen prepare once more, though not for the long work of morning. This is a quieter return. Checking equipment, repairing nets, preparing for the following day. The water beside them remains calm, moving in its steady, unbroken flow. Occasionally, a small breeze passes over the surface, creating ripples that disappear just as quickly as they form. As the sun lowers further, shadows begin to stretch across the land in long, soft lines. The world starts to feel wider again. Buildings, trees, and people are outlined in gentle contrast. The brightness of midday fades into something more forgiving. The village responds without thought. Work slows again, but this time not because of heat. It slows because the day is shifting. Tasks are completed rather than paused. Tools are set down. Materials are stored. Hands are washed in cool water drawn from clay vessels. The feeling is not exhaustion alone, but completion of a cycle within the larger cycle of the day. There is a quiet satisfaction in this movement toward evening. Not spoken, not named, but present in the way people carry themselves. Shoulders loosen. Steps become lighter. Conversation grows slightly more frequent, though still soft. The river reflects this change most clearly. Its surface now holds the colors of late afternoon soft amber, pale gold, and the first hints of deepening blue. The same water that carried the brightness of morning now carries the gentleness of evening. It never changes its pace, yet it always seems to belong to the moment it is in. Near the village edge, an elderly woman sits outside her home, watching the light shift across the ground. She does not speak. Her presence is still, but not distant. Around her, life continues its slow return to motion. Children pass by. Workers return from fields. The sound of small conversations begins to gather like threads in the air. She has seen this transition many times. The long arc from morning labor to afternoon stillness to evening return. It is not something she thinks about. It is something she recognizes in her body, in her breath, in the way the world changes without needing to announce itself. As the sun moves closer to the horizon, the heat finally begins to release its hold more fully. The air becomes gentler. A faint breeze moves through the village, touching skin and cloth, carrying the first real promise of coolness. People begin to gather in open areas, not for work now, but for shared presence. Some sit near doorways. Others stand in small groups along paths. Conversations remain simple. The day is discussed only in passing. What was done? What remains? What will continue tomorrow? There is no urgency in any of it. The fields beyond the village rest in long golden lines. The river continues its quiet journey. The homes hold the warmth of the day within their walls. And slowly, almost without effort, the entire land begins to prepare itself for the softer hours of evening. A time when movement will slow once more. A time when voices will lower. A time when the world will feel close, warm, and quietly still again. Evening arrives in a way that feels almost unnoticeable at first, as if the world simply decides to soften rather than change. The sun lowers toward the far edge of the land, and its light spreads wider instead of brighter. Everything it touches becomes warmer in tone, but gentler in feeling. The sharpness of the day begins to fade, replaced by a calm that settles slowly over fields, river, and village alike. The Nile reflects this change most clearly. Its surface now carries long bands of gold and pale orange, shifting softly with each small movement of water. Boats resting near the shore seem to drift in place even while tide, as if the river itself is breathing them gently forward and back. The sound of water against wood becomes more noticeable again, no longer hidden beneath the intensity of midday silence. Along the riverbanks, people finish their final small tasks. Nets are gathered and folded with care. Ropes are coiled and placed where they will be needed again tomorrow. Hands move with familiar patience, not rushing, not lingering. Everything has its place, and everything returns to it. The river gives its last light of the day, and the village responds by preparing to let it go. In the fields, the final movements of labor come to a close. Farmers walk slowly between rows of soil, checking what has been done, what will wait until morning. Tools are lifted one last time and carried back along dusty paths. The earth is no longer hot, only warm now, holding the memory of the sun that passed over it all day without pause. As people return from the fields, the paths between village and farmland grow more active again. Figures move in soft silhouette against the lowering sky. Some walk alone, others in small groups. Conversation is light, scattered, unimportant in its content, but steady in its presence. The silence of midday is gone, replaced by the quiet return of human sound. Inside the village, evening preparation begins without ceremony. Homes open more fully now. Doors remain wide. The air feels easier to breathe. Cooking fires are lit again, not for the heat of baking bread this time, but for simple evening meals. The scent of cooked grains, vegetables, and warmed water spreads gently through narrow streets and open courtyards. Families gather in familiar spaces. Mats are placed on packed earth floors or worn stone. Bowls are shared. Food is divided in small portions, enough to ease the body after a long day, never more than needed. The act of eating is slow, almost quiet, as if the entire village has agreed to lower its pace together. Children sit close to adults now, their earlier energy softened by the long hours of light. Some lean against walls. Others rest their heads on folded arms. Their eyes grow heavy in uneven rhythms, opening and closing as the warmth of evening settles deeper into their small bodies. Scribes finish their records for the day. The final marks are made with steady hands. Materials are carefully stored away. Papyrus is rolled or folded. Ink is set aside. Their work does not end with celebration, only with completion. A quiet acknowledgement that what needed to be written has been recorded, and what remains will wait until tomorrow. In workshops, tools are cleaned and placed in order. Surfaces are brushed free of dust. Stone and wood rest in half-finished forms, waiting for another day of shaping. The craftsmen move more slowly now, not from exhaustion alone, but from the natural slowing that comes with evening. The day's labor does not end abruptly, it dissolves gradually into stillness. Near the river, the light begins to shift again. Gold deepens into amber, and amber softens into fading copper. The sky above grows wider in feeling, as if opening itself to the first signs of night. A faint breeze moves along the water, carrying cooler air across the surface. It touches skin, cloth, and reeds, bringing a subtle relief that no one speaks aloud, but everyone feels. People begin to gather in quieter arrangements. Some sit outside homes, watching the changing sky. Others stand near doorways, speaking softly with neighbors. There is no urgency in these moments. The day's demands have been met, and what remains is simply presence. Farther out, the river continues its endless motion. It does not slow for evening, nor does it change its course. Yet it seems to belong more fully to this hour than any other. The reflections upon it stretch longer now, broken gently by ripples that carry the fading light in thin, shimmering lines. As the sun reaches the horizon, the village enters a different kind of silence. Not the silence of sleep, but the silence of completion. The heat is gone now. The land is no longer pressing against itself. It is open, softened, and calm. People move with ease, no longer weighed down by the demands of labor or the resistance of midday heat. Steps are lighter. Voices are lower. Even breathing seems to slow in response to the cooling air. Small fires flicker in courtyards and near homes. Their light is warm, close, and steady. Around them, families remain together in simple arrangements. Some speak in low tones. Others sit quietly, simply watching the flame as it shifts and settles. The sky above begins to change in deeper ways now. The last traces of sunlight fade, leaving behind soft gradients of blue and gray. One by one, faint stars begin to appear. Not all at once, but gradually, as if they are returning to the sky after a long, quiet absence. The village does not react to this change. It simply continues its slow transition into night. There is no need for announcement or attention. The rhythm of the day has already guided everyone here. In time, the sounds grow fewer. Not gone, but fewer. A door closes softly. A final conversation ends in a whisper. A child is lifted and carried inside. A cooking fire is allowed to burn lower, its glow shrinking into quiet embers. The Nile reflects the darkening sky now, holding both the last memory of light and the first presence of night together on its surface. It continues forward, as it always has, through day and into darkness without interruption. And as the village settles deeper into evening stillness, the world becomes softer again. Not empty, not silent, but gently held in a calm that belongs only to this time between waking and sleep. Night settles over the land without hurry, as if it has been waiting all day to arrive at its proper place. The last traces of color fade from the sky above the Nile, leaving behind a deep, quiet blue that slowly turns darker with every passing moment. Stars appear more clearly now, scattered gently across the wide sky like small, steady lights that do not move, only watch. The village grows quieter, but not in an abrupt way. It is a soft fading, sound by sound, moment by moment. The final movements of the evening slow into stillness. Doors close gently. Footsteps become rare. Voices lower until they are only whispers, and then even those begin to disappear into the calm air. Small fires remain lit in scattered places. Their glow is warm and steady, flickering against mud brick walls and simple woven cloths. Around them, people sit in relaxed silence or speak in soft tones that do not travel far. The firelight makes everything feel closer, smaller, more contained. It gathers the night in rather than pushing it away. Inside homes, families prepare for sleep. Mats are unrolled slowly. Simple bedding is arranged with practiced hands. There is no need for long preparation. Everything has its place, and everything is already familiar. People lie down where they have rested many times before, in the same quiet spaces shaped by years of repetition. Children settle first, their energy fully drained by the long day. Their breathing becomes steady quickly, slipping into sleep as easily as drifting water. Adults remain awake a little longer, sitting or lying still, listening to the final sounds of the village soften around them. Outside, the Nile continues its endless movement. Even in darkness, it does not stop. It reflects the night sky now, not as brightness but as depth. Dark water carrying darker sky, both flowing together without resistance. Occasionally, a faint ripple catches a hint of starlight, then releases it again into stillness. Along the riverbank, boats rest completely now. Tide ropes hold them gently in place. Nets hang motionless. The wooden frames creak only rarely, responding to the slow movement of water beneath them. Fishermen have long returned to their homes. Their tools rest beside them, no longer needed until morning returns. The fields beyond the village are now fully quiet. The soil, warmed through the day, has cooled slightly under the night air. It holds that quiet warmth still, as if remembering the sun that once pressed upon it. Nothing moves there now except the faint passing of wind through dry plants. In the village, the last embers of activity fade. A final bowl is washed. A final cloth is folded. A final door is secured, not with urgency, but with routine care. Each action is small, but together they complete the gentle closing of the day. Now there is only stillness. Not emptiness, but stillness filled with presence. The night air is cooler, and it moves lightly through open spaces between homes. It carries the scent of earth, water, and distant smoke. It touches skin softly, bringing comfort rather than discomfort. The village does not resist it. It accepts it the way it has always accepted night. Inside the homes, people lie in quiet rest. Some remain half awake for a time, listening to faint sounds, the distant movement of water, the occasional shift of wood, the soft rustle of fabric. But even these sounds fade quickly, becoming part of the background of sleep. The scribes have finished their records. Their workspaces are dark now, tools carefully stored away. No ink moves, no papyrus shifts. Only the memory of the day remains in written form, waiting for morning light to be read again. The craftsmen's workshops are still. The tools lie in order, each one placed where it belongs. Wood, stone, and clay rest in unfinished states, not forgotten, only paused. The village breathes more slowly now. It is not asleep all at once. It never is. It slips into sleep in layers, like the land itself slipping into the night. Outside, the stars grow clearer. The sky deepens further, becoming vast and steady. The Nile reflects them without effort, carrying their light in broken, gentle lines across its surface. The river does not sleep, but it becomes part of the night's quiet rhythm. Time here does not feel divided into sharp moments. It flows like the river itself, morning into afternoon, afternoon into evening, evening into night without resistance, without interruption. And in this deepening calm, the village rests. Not fully gone. Not fully awake. But held gently in the space between effort and silence, where the world feels close, warm, and still, and the night continues to move softly over everything without ever needing to be noticed. The night deepens further, not by force, but by gradual settling, like sand resting at the bottom of still water. The village now lies almost entirely in silence, with only the faintest traces of sound remaining. Even those sounds feel distant, softened by the darkness that surrounds them. The Nile continues to move through it all. In the darkness, the river feels larger in presence. Not because it changes, but because everything else has quieted around it. Its surface carries the night sky in fragments, broken reflections of stars that tremble gently with each ripple. It does not hurry. It does not pause. It simply flows, as it always has, through every hour of the world. Along its banks, reeds sway lightly with the passing air. Their movement is small, almost invisible, but constant. The land breathes through them in a way that feels subtle and steady. There is no urgency in any direction now. Everything belongs to rest. Inside the village, sleep spreads more completely. Homes that were once filled with quiet movement are now still. Bodies lie in familiar positions, wrapped in thin coverings that hold warmth more than protection. Breathing becomes the most noticeable rhythm. Slow. Even. Repeating without thought. Occasionally, someone shifts slightly in sleep, adjusting to the softness of the ground beneath them or the warmth of the night air. These movements are brief and gentle, disappearing quickly back into stillness. Outside, the last embers of firelight have faded in most places. A few small glows remain, barely visible, like memories of warmth rather than active flame. They flicker weakly and then settle into darkness, leaving only the natural light of the stars above. The sky is now fully open. Wide, deep, and endless. Stars stretch across it in patterns that have always been there, unchanged by time, unchanged by the lives beneath them. The people in the village do not look at them now. They do not need to. The sky is not separate from them, it is simply part of the night they rest within. The fields lie in complete stillness. No movement, no sound, only the faint outline of earth shaped by long labor. The day's work is gone from sight but not from memory. It remains in the soil itself, in the turned ground, in the harvested spaces, in the quiet preparation for what will come again tomorrow. The air grows slightly cooler as the night continues. It moves gently through narrow paths between homes, touching walls that still hold warmth from the day. The contrast between warmth and coolness is soft, not sharp. It does not disturb sleep. It simply exists. Near the river, a single small boat shifts faintly against its rope, responding to the water beneath it. The sound is barely noticeable, a soft wooden creak that fades quickly back into silence. The river does not change its pace for this sound. It continues forward, carrying both darkness and reflection without resistance. There is something steady about this hour that cannot be described in action. It is not movement that defines it, but the absence of interruption. The world is not paused. It is simply resting in its own continuity. In one small home near the edge of the village, an elder lies awake for a moment longer than the others. Not troubled, not restless, only aware. The sound of the river reaches them faintly through the walls. The cool air drifts across the floor. The weight of the day has long since settled into the body, not as discomfort, but as familiarity. They remain still, listening to the quiet structure of night. And slowly, even that awareness softens. The final layer of wakefulness fades not like sleep arriving suddenly, but like a thought dissolving into still water. There is no clear moment when it ends. Only a gentle slipping away. Outside, the village is now fully held by night. Not abandoned. Not empty. Simply resting in its place within a much larger world that continues without needing attention. The Nile moves on. The wind moves on. The stars remain steady above. And everything below them rests in quiet agreement, as if the entire land has chosen, together, to pause inside the calmness of darkness until morning returns once again. The night does not change quickly. It deepens in a way that feels almost unnoticeable, like ink spreading slowly through cloth. The village remains asleep, held gently beneath the wide silence of the sky. Everything that moved during the day has now softened into stillness. Only the river continues its quiet motion. The Nile carries the darkness forward as it always does, without resistance and without pause. Its surface is no longer bright with reflection, but it still holds the sky in a muted way. Stars appear there in broken patterns, stretching and bending slightly with every small ripple. It is a kind of reflection that never stays the same, yet never disappears. Along the banks, the land rests in a heavy calm. The fields are dark shapes now, barely distinguishable from one another. The work done during the day is no longer visible in detail, only in feeling. The turned soil, the cleared paths, the quiet preparation for growth, all of it sits under the night like a memory the earth is holding without speaking. A faint breeze moves through the reeds near the river. It is soft enough that it barely changes anything, yet everything it touches responds slightly. Leaves shift. Dust stirs and settles again. Even the air feels like it is moving without effort, as if the world is breathing slowly in its sleep. Inside the village, sleep continues without interruption. Homes are still. The shapes of resting bodies are calm and familiar, lying in positions shaped by habit and comfort. No one speaks. No one moves with intention. The sounds of breathing blend together across rooms and walls, forming a quiet rhythm that belongs not to individuals, but to the village as a whole. Time here feels less like something passing and more like something resting. The night holds everything evenly. There is no urgency anywhere. No direction pulling the world forward. Even the idea of time seems to loosen its grip, becoming something softer, less defined. A few small animals move in the outer edges of the land. Their presence is brief and careful. A rustle near dry grass. A soft step along the ground. Then stillness again. The night accepts them without change. Everything is part of the same quiet pattern. Farther out, the river bends gently through the landscape, disappearing into darkness and reappearing again in faint highlights of reflected sky. It does not feel separate from the night. It feels like part of it, carrying it forward in continuous motion. Inside one of the homes, a small shift breaks the stillness briefly. A person turns in their sleep, adjusting to the cooler air that has begun to settle deeper into the village. The movement is small, almost nothing, and quickly returns to stillness. Even sleep here has a rhythm that blends into the world around it. The night continues to move forward. Slowly. Quietly. Without announcement. Above the village, the sky remains vast and open. The stars do not change their positions in any way that can be felt from below. They simply remain, distant and steady, as if watching over a world that does not require watching, only existing. There is a point in the night where everything feels evenly held. Not heavier. Not lighter. Just balanced in quiet rest. The village reaches that point now. Firelight is gone completely. Sound has faded to nearly nothing. Movement has dissolved into stillness. Even the memory of the day feels distant, as if it belongs to another layer of time. Yet nothing is absent. The river is still there. The land is still there. The homes are still there. Life continues, only in its most quiet form. And as the night carries on without end or urgency, the world remains gently folded into itself, resting beneath the slow breath of darkness that stretches across everything, holding it all without asking anything in return. The night settles into its deepest calm now, the kind of darkness that feels less like absence and more like a soft covering laid gently over the land. Everything beneath it continues in quiet agreement. Nothing resists it. Nothing pushes against it. The village, the fields, and the river all remain held within the same slow, steady silence. The Nile moves through this darkness as it always has. Its flow is patient and unchanging, slipping past riverbanks shaped by countless years of labor and flood. In the absence of daylight, it becomes something more felt than seen. A presence rather than a view. The water touches the edges of the land with the same quiet rhythm it has carried for generations, never hurried, never uncertain. Small ripples appear and fade without cause that can be seen. A shift in current. A passing breeze. A movement beneath the surface. Each one disappears into the next, leaving no mark except the continuation of flow. On either side of the river, the land rests in complete stillness. The fields are dark and open, their shapes softened by night. The work of the day is no longer visible in detail, yet it remains present in the arrangement of earth and path. The soil holds everything quietly, as if remembering each movement of hands and tools without needing to speak of it. The village itself lies deeper in rest now. Inside the mud-brick homes, sleep has settled fully over every space. Bodies rest where they have always rested, in familiar places shaped by habit and comfort. There is no tension in movement, no urgency in breath. Everything is softened, eased, and slow. Occasionally, someone breathes more deeply for a moment before returning to the same steady rhythm. A hand shifts slightly. A cloth is adjusted. These small motions do not break the silence. They simply exist within it, like faint ripples on still water. Outside, the air is cooler now. It moves more freely through the narrow paths between homes, passing over warm walls and cool ground without distinction. The difference between day and night has fully settled. What was heat is now memory. What was brightness is now depth. The stars above remain unchanged. They spread across the sky in quiet patterns, distant and patient. Their light does not reach the ground in a way that demands attention. Instead, it rests softly on everything, blending with darkness rather than breaking it. The sky feels wide and uncontained, as if it has no edge, only continuation. The river reflects this vastness in its own shifting way. Where the water is still, the stars appear more clearly. Where it moves, they stretch and blur into faint trails of light. Nothing remains fixed for long, yet nothing disappears entirely. Everything is carried forward in gentle transformation. Along the far edges of the village, where homes thin out and the land opens toward fields, the night feels even quieter. There is space here that seems larger than it did in the day. Not because anything has grown, but because everything has become still. A faint sound of wind passes through dry plants near the riverbank. It is brief and soft, barely altering the silence. The plants respond with a slight rustle, then return to stillness. The sound does not linger. It simply becomes part of the night and then dissolves. Inside one home, an elder remains half aware for a short moment, not awake in thought, not fully asleep, but existing in that quiet space between. The body rests heavily, while the mind drifts without direction. There is no concern in this state. Only softness. Only presence without effort. Then even that awareness fades. Not suddenly. Just gently, like a light dimming rather than being turned off. The village continues its rest without interruption. No part of it is separate from the night. Not the river. Not the fields. Not the homes. Everything belongs to the same slow rhythm now, one that does not require attention to continue. Time moves, but it does so without sound. Without pressure. Without announcement. And in this deep, steady quiet, the world remains folded into itself, resting beneath the endless sky where darkness and stillness flow together like water that never stops, yet never rushes, carrying the entire land forward in a calm that feels as though it has always been here and will continue without needing to be noticed at all. The night now feels fully settled, as if it has reached its most complete form. There is no remaining trace of the day's intensity. No heat pressing into the ground, no brightness lingering in the sky, no movement that belongs to labor or urgency. Everything has softened into a single quiet state that stretches across land, river, and village alike. The Nile continues to move through the stillness. It does not change its rhythm for the darkness. It does not slow or deepen. It simply remains itself, flowing as it always has, carrying the night along its surface. Where the water is calm, the sky rests clearly upon it. Where it shifts, the reflection breaks into scattered fragments of starlight that gather and release again without effort. There is something steady in that motion that feels older than memory. Not loud, not commanding, only present. Along the banks, the land remains undisturbed. The fields lie in complete rest, their surfaces uneven with the marks of work done earlier in the day. Furrows, paths, and cleared sections all rest under the same darkness, becoming one continuous shape rather than many separate ones. The earth does not erase what has been done. It simply holds it, gently and without judgment. The village sleeps more deeply now. Inside the mud-brick homes, the air is still and close, warmed slightly by the bodies resting within. There is no conversation, no movement of intent, only the steady rhythm of breathing that rises and falls in slow cycles. Each home carries its own quiet, yet together they form a single shared silence. Occasionally, a sleeper shifts position, pressing deeper into rest. A hand loosens. A shoulder settles. These motions are not interruptions. They are part of the same calm that holds everything in place. Outside, the night air has grown cooler. It moves lightly through open paths, brushing against walls that still hold faint warmth from the long day. The contrast is gentle. Not sharp. Not uncomfortable. Just a soft reminder that the world continues to change even while everything rests. The stars remain steady above. They do not appear brighter or closer, yet their presence feels more noticeable now that everything below has quieted. The sky feels vast in a way that is difficult to measure. Not empty, but full in a quiet sense, as if it holds more than can be seen. No one in the village looks up now. There is no need. The sky is simply part of the environment of rest, like the ground beneath or the walls around. It exists without demand. Near the river, a faint shift in water sends a soft ripple outward. It touches the shore, returns, and fades. The sound is barely there, but in the deep silence of night, even the smallest movement feels present for a moment before dissolving again. The river does not repeat itself. It continues. Always forward. Always steady. In the distance beyond the village, where the land opens into wider darkness, there is no sign of movement at all. Only shapes of earth and plant resting beneath the night. The world extends outward in silence, uninterrupted and calm. Inside one home, a sleeping figure exhales more slowly for a moment, then returns to a steady rhythm. The change is so small it almost does not exist. Yet it is part of the living quiet that fills every space. Time passes without marking itself. There are no signals of beginning or end here. Only continuation. Only presence that does not require awareness to remain. The village remains held in this gentle suspension between the earth and the sky, where nothing demands attention and everything is allowed to simply be. The river carries on. The wind moves when it chooses. The stars remain where they have always been. And beneath all of it, the land rests in a calm that feels wide and unbroken, as though the entire world has agreed, without words or reason, to remain quiet together for a while longer, until the next soft turning of time begins again somewhere far beyond the edge of the night. The night has now reached its most settled hour, when even the idea of time feels softened, as if it no longer moves in clear steps but in long, quiet stretches. The village rests without resistance, held gently between the earth below and the vast sky above. Everything feels evenly still. The Nile continues its slow passage through the darkness. Its movement is unchanged, but in this hour it feels especially calm, as though the river itself has entered a deeper state of rest while still flowing forward. The water carries the reflection of stars in faint, shifting fragments, never holding them in place for long, yet never losing them entirely either. It is a quiet kind of continuity. Along the riverbanks, the land is fully asleep in appearance and feeling. The fields are dark, their shapes blending into one another. The marks of labor from earlier in the day are still present, but they no longer feel active. They feel absorbed into the soil, as if the earth has taken them in and made them part of its memory. Nothing grows yet. Nothing moves. But everything is held. In the village, sleep is deep and steady now. Inside each home, bodies rest in stillness shaped by long days of repetition. There is no tension left in movement. No anticipation. Only rest. The air inside is warm in places where people sleep close together, and cooler near open gaps where night air drifts in softly. Breathing becomes the most consistent rhythm in the entire village. It rises and falls in unison across homes, though no one is aware of it. It is not organized. It is simply shared through the quiet presence of sleep. Occasionally, a sleeper shifts slightly, adjusting to the ground or mat beneath them. These movements are slow, almost weightless. They do not disturb the surrounding silence. Instead, they blend into it, becoming part of the same calm that fills every space. Outside, the night remains clear. The stars hold their positions across the sky, distant and patient. Their light is faint but steady, not reaching the ground in any direct way, yet still present in the feeling of openness above. The sky feels wide enough to contain everything without effort. There is no urgency in it. No direction. Only vastness. A soft breeze passes through the outer edges of the village again. It moves through dry grass and along the sides of buildings, carrying a faint coolness that touches everything briefly before moving on. It does not linger. It does not change anything. It simply passes through and continues. Near the river, a small disturbance in the water creates a gentle ripple that spreads outward and fades. The sound is almost nothing. Yet in the deep quiet of the night, it feels like part of a larger rhythm that cannot be fully heard, only sensed. The river continues forward. Always forward. Never repeating, yet never leaving itself behind. Far from the village, the land stretches into darker silence. There are no visible paths now, only shapes suggested by faint outlines against the night sky. The world feels larger in this darkness, but also more unified, as if distance itself has softened. Inside the homes, sleep deepens further. Even dreams, if they come, feel quiet and unhurried. There is no sharpness in this night. No sudden movement of thought or feeling. Everything moves slowly, as if it has been wrapped in the same gentle stillness that covers the land. The village does not change. It simply continues resting. The river does not change. It simply continues flowing. The sky does not change. It simply continues holding everything above. And in this shared stillness, the world feels complete in its calmness, not because anything has ended, but because nothing needs to begin or move faster than it already is. The night remains wide, steady, and soft. And everything beneath it rests together in a quiet that feels endless, as though the earth itself has decided to breathe slowly and evenly until the first faint hint of morning eventually returns somewhere far beyond the edge of sleep. The night holds steady, as if it has learned the shape of the land and chosen to stay within it. Nothing changes quickly now. Even darkness feels settled, no longer arriving, only existing. The village remains wrapped in this quiet presence, where time feels stretched and softened. The Nile continues its endless movement through the sleeping world. Its surface is almost invisible in places, blending with the night so completely that it becomes more of a feeling than a sight. And yet, when the starlight touches it just right, there are brief, gentle glimmers, small reminders that the water is still moving, still carrying the land forward in its slow, patient way. There is no sound that belongs to the river alone. Only the soft blending of water and wind and distance, forming a quiet that cannot be separated into parts. Along the banks, the earth rests in full stillness. The fields lie undisturbed, shaped by earlier labor that now feels distant, almost like it happened in another layer of time. The soil holds the memory of hands and tools without effort, as if remembering is simply part of what it does. Nothing is erased. Nothing is demanded. Everything is simply kept. The village itself remains deeply asleep. Inside the homes, the air is still and close, softened by the presence of many bodies resting in shared quiet. There is a comfort in this closeness, not spoken, not thought about, only lived. The sounds of breathing continue in slow, even patterns, rising and falling like a single, wide rhythm that belongs to the entire place. There are no interruptions now. No movement that breaks the calm. Only the steady presence of rest. Occasionally, a sleeper turns slightly, pressing deeper into the warmth of their resting place. A foot shifts. An arm relaxes further. These small adjustments are so gentle they feel like part of the silence itself, not separate from it. Outside, the air grows cooler still. It moves lightly through the narrow paths between homes, through open doorways and along the edges of walls that have held warmth through the long day. The contrast between inside and outside is soft, not sharp. It does not disturb sleep. It only exists as another layer of the night. Above, the sky remains vast and unchanged. The stars continue their quiet watch, scattered across the darkness in patterns that feel both distant and familiar. Their light does not reach the ground in strong ways. Instead, it rests faintly on rooftops, on water, on the edges of fields, blending into the night rather than breaking it. No one looks for meaning in them now. They simply are. A faint movement near the riverbank causes a small ripple to spread outward across the water. It fades quickly, leaving the surface as still as before. The river does not pause for such movements. It absorbs them and continues forward, unchanged in its direction or its pace. The night does not respond to anything. It simply continues. Far beyond the village, where the land opens into deeper darkness, there is only silence and space. No signs of movement, no changes in shape. The world feels large, but also unified, as if distance itself has become quiet and soft. Inside the homes, sleep deepens again. The body becomes heavier in rest, not with burden, but with release. Thoughts slow further, fading into places that are no longer active or clear. Everything becomes softer at the edges, less defined, more gentle. The village remains within this shared stillness. Not separate parts, but one continuous presence resting beneath the same sky, along the same river, on the same land that has carried countless days just like this one. Nothing asks to change. Nothing calls for attention. And so the night continues its quiet movement forward, not as a passage towards something else, but as a long, steady moment that simply holds everything in place, gently, evenly, and without end. The deepest part of the night lingers over the Nile Valley like a soft blanket laid carefully across the earth. The village remains quiet beneath it. The homes, the fields, the workshops, and the riverbanks all rest within the same gentle darkness. Nothing asks to be noticed. Nothing asks to be remembered. Everything simply exists. The river continues its patient journey through the sleeping land. Water slips past reeds and muddy banks with the same calm rhythm it carried yesterday and the day before that. Long before these villagers were born, the river flowed. Long after they are gone, it will continue. Yet tonight, in this quiet hour, it feels close and familiar, like a steady companion breathing softly beside the village. The stars remain above, silent and distant. Their reflections drift across the surface of the Nile, stretching and breaking with the current. One moment a star appears whole upon the water. The next moment it becomes a scattered shimmer, carried gently downstream. The river never tries to hold anything. It simply carries everything forward. In the village, sleep remains deep. Inside one mudbrick home, a family rests together in the warmth left behind by the day. The walls around them are thick and sturdy, built from earth gathered nearby. They have stood through many seasons of heat and flood. Their surfaces are rough beneath the touch, but comforting in their familiarity. A child sleeps near a parent, curled beneath a light covering. Small hands rest peacefully. The long day has emptied every bit of energy from the body. There is no resistance to sleep now. Nearby, an older worker lies on a woven mat. The muscles of the shoulders and arms still carry traces of the day's labor. Those muscles have spent years lifting, digging, carrying, and shaping. Even in sleep, the body remembers its work. Yet tonight there is rest. For a few hours, the fields ask nothing. The river asks nothing. The world asks nothing. Outside, the narrow village paths sit empty beneath the stars. During daylight they fill with footsteps, conversations, baskets, animals, and tools. But now they belong only to silence. The dust has settled. The air has cooled. The heat of afternoon feels very far away. A faint breeze moves through the village, slipping around corners and across rooftops. It brushes against woven reeds and hanging cloth. The movement is so light that it hardly creates a sound. The night welcomes it without change. Farther away, beyond the cluster of homes, the fields spread across the darkness. These fields are the heart of daily life. Every morning they receive workers. Every evening they release them. The soil holds footprints, tool marks, and signs of effort. Yet under the cover of night, all of those details disappear. The land becomes smooth and quiet once more. It is easy to imagine that the earth itself is sleeping. Not truly asleep, perhaps, but resting, waiting, gathering itself for another day beneath the sun. Near the edge of the village, a storage building stands in silence. During daylight, grain moves in and out through its doorway. Scribes make records. Workers carry heavy sacks across worn floors. Tonight there is none of that. The grain rests where it was placed. The records remain where they were stored. The doorway remains closed. Everything is still. Even the animals have settled. Donkeys stand quietly or lie resting near walls and shelters. Chickens tuck themselves into safe places. Their movements have slowed to almost nothing. The entire village seems to breathe together. Slowly. Evenly. Without effort. The night grows older. Yet it remains calm. No sudden sounds arrive. No interruptions disturb the darkness. Only the river continues its endless journey. Along the Nile, the air carries faint scents that belong to the water and the earth. Damp reeds. River mud. The lingering traces of cooking fires now reduced to cool ash. These scents drift gently through the darkness, blending together until they feel like part of the night itself. The sky above remains vast and open. Some stars sit low near the horizon. Others shine high overhead. Their light has traveled an unimaginable distance to arrive here, touching the same river, the same fields, and the same sleeping village. Yet the people below know nothing of that journey tonight. They sleep. And the stars continue shining whether anyone watches them or not. The hours pass quietly. The village remains wrapped in rest. A fisherman sleeps beside coiled nets that will be needed again at dawn. A farmer rests after a day spent beneath the heavy sun. A scribe sleeps near carefully stored records. A baker rests after shaping bread before sunrise and again before evening. Each life follows its own routine. Yet tonight all those routines have paused together. There is comfort in that pause. The body cannot work forever. The hands cannot carry forever. The feet cannot walk forever. Every laborer eventually reaches this moment, where effort gives way to stillness. And so the village sleeps. The river flows. The stars shine. The cool air drifts gently through narrow streets. The earth holds the memory of the day. And somewhere beyond the eastern horizon, still hidden far from sight, the next morning waits patiently for its turn to arrive. But for now, the darkness remains. Soft. Quiet. Unhurried. holding the ancient world in a peaceful stillness beside the endless waters of the Nile. The night continues without interruption, deep and gentle, stretching across the Nile Valley like a calm river of darkness. Nothing in the village seems eager to move forward. Everything remains settled into the quiet rhythm of rest. The stars still hang above the land. Their reflections drift across the water in long, trembling lines. The Nile receives each reflection without effort, carrying it for a moment before breaking it apart into smaller fragments of light. The river never stops moving. Yet it never seems hurried. It flows with the same patience that shapes every part of life here. Along the banks, the reeds stand quietly in the darkness. Their thin stalks sway only when touched by the occasional breeze. The movement is so slight that it feels less like motion and more like breathing. The night air is cool now. Cooler than it has been for many hours. The heat stored in the earth through the long day continues to fade slowly into the darkness. Stone floors release their warmth. Mud brick walls cool little by little. The entire village seems to settle deeper into comfort. Inside the homes, sleep remains steady. A farmer lies motionless beneath a light covering. The day's work has completely left his thoughts. Earlier, his hands were busy with tools and soil. His shoulders carried the weight of labor beneath the sun. Now there is nothing to carry. The fields can wait. The river can wait. The morning can wait. For these few quiet hours, there is only rest. Nearby, another family sleeps close together. The youngest child shifts slightly and then becomes still again. Breathing settles into a slow rhythm. The sounds of sleep are gentle. A quiet inhale. A soft exhale. The faint rustle of cloth. Nothing more. Outside, the village paths remain empty. Earlier they held the movement of dozens of lives. Sandals crossing dusty ground. Donkeys carrying loads. Workers walking toward fields and workshops. Now the paths belong only to the darkness. Dust rests undisturbed. No footprints are being made. No tools are being carried. No voices drift through the air. Even the workshops are silent. The stoneworkers' tools lie exactly where they were placed. The carpenter's bench remains untouched. Half-finished pieces of work wait patiently in the darkness. There is no hurry to complete them. Morning will come when it comes. The village understands this. Life here follows rhythms older than any individual person. The river rises and falls. The seasons change. Children grow into workers. Workers grow old. And through it all, each night offers the same quiet pause. The Nile glides onward. Farther down the river, water slips past sleeping fishing boats tied along the shore. Their ropes pull gently with the current. A soft creak of wood appears now and then before disappearing again into silence. Nothing disturbs the calm. The stars continue their silent watch above. Some seem brighter than others. Some appear faint and distant. Together they create a sky that feels endless. If someone were awake to look upward, they would see a ceiling of light stretching beyond imagination. But almost everyone sleeps. And so the stars shine only for the river, the fields, and the quiet earth below. The hours continue to pass. Slowly. Almost invisibly. The deepest part of night begins to soften at its edges, though no sign of morning can yet be seen. The darkness remains complete. Yet somewhere far beyond the horizon, time continues its steady movement. The village does not notice. The sleepers do not notice. The river alone seems aware of every passing moment, carrying each one away as gently as it carries fallen leaves and drifting reeds. Inside a small home near the riverbank, an elderly woman sleeps peacefully. Her life has followed the same cycles for many years. She has known flood seasons and dry seasons. She has watched children become adults. She has seen countless evenings settle over the Nile. And tonight, like every night before it, sleep has arrived quietly. There is comfort in routine. Comfort in knowing what tomorrow will likely bring. Bread to prepare. Water to carry. Fields to tend. Conversations to share. Simple tasks repeated again and again until they become part of life itself. For now, those tasks remain far away. The night protects this pause. It creates a space where labor disappears for a little while. A space where tired bodies can recover. A space where silence can settle gently over everything. The cool breeze returns once more, drifting across rooftops and narrow paths. It touches clay walls. It moves through reeds along the river. It passes over sleeping fields. Then it continues onward into the darkness. The Nile follows its endless course beneath the stars. The village remains asleep. The land remains still. And the ancient world rests peacefully beside the water, held within a long and quiet night that seems content to last forever. The ancient night remains calm over the Nile Valley, stretching across the land with a quiet patience that seems older than memory itself. The darkness has settled so completely now that it feels woven into every part of the world. The river, the fields, the homes, and the sleeping people all rest beneath the same gentle covering. Nothing rushes. Nothing demands attention. The world simply exists in stillness. The Nile continues its endless journey through the darkness. Water moves past familiar banks, brushing softly against reeds and mud. Small currents weave together beneath the surface, unseen by anyone sleeping nearby. The river carries coolness with it, and that coolness spreads slowly into the surrounding air. For countless generations, people have fallen asleep beside these waters. Children have drifted into dreams while listening to the distant sound of the current. Farmers have rested their tired bodies after long days beneath the sun. Fishermen have slept while their boats waited quietly along the shore. The river has accompanied them all. It asks for nothing. It simply remains. Near the village, the fields rest in darkness. During daylight, these fields are places of constant effort. Hands work the soil. Feet cross narrow paths, tools rise and fall in steady rhythms. But now there is no labor. No movement. Only quiet earth beneath a sky full of stars. The soil seems to hold the memory of every season. Floodwaters that once covered it. Seeds planted carefully by patient hands. Harvests gathered under the bright sun. All of these memories remain hidden within the land, resting silently beneath the night. A faint breeze passes over the fields. The tops of dry plants sway gently. The movement lasts only a moment before stillness returns once more. The village remains asleep. Mud brick homes stand close together, their walls pale beneath the starlight. In the darkness, they appear almost timeless, as though they have always been here and always will be. Inside one home, a family rests together on woven mats. The youngest child sleeps deeply, wrapped in the effortless peace that only childhood can bring. Nearby, older family members sleep with the heavier rest of those who have spent many hours working beneath the sun. Their hands bear signs of labor. Their feet have walked dusty roads countless times. Their bodies know exhaustion well. And yet, for this moment, all effort has faded. Sleep has gently claimed the day from them. Outside, the village pathways remain empty. The dust lies undisturbed. No sandals cross the ground. No voices drift between homes. The silence feels complete but not lonely. It is the silence of a place at rest. The silence of a community sharing the same night. Farther away, near the riverbank, fishing nets hang where they were left after the day's work. The fibers sway slightly whenever the breeze passes through them. They wait quietly for morning. Like the boats. Like the tools. Like the people. Everything waits. Everything rests. Above, the stars continue their silent journey across the sky. Though no one notices, the heavens have slowly shifted during the long hours of darkness. Constellations move little by little. Bright stars slide across the vast blackness. Their movement is slow enough to feel invisible. Only time itself seems aware of it. The Nile reflects these distant lights as best it can. The water gathers fragments of starlight and carries them downstream. A ripple forms. A reflection breaks apart. Then everything becomes smooth again. The river never grows tired of this work. It has been carrying reflections for thousands of years. It will continue long after tonight has passed. Near the edge of the village, a storage building stands quietly in the darkness. Inside are jars of grain gathered through careful labor. Each jar represents many days of effort. Many hours beneath the heat. Many journeys between field and village. Tonight, all of that work sleeps alongside the people who performed it. Nothing is being counted. Nothing is being measured. The grain rests. The records rest. The workers rest. The night welcomes all of it equally. The cool air continues drifting gently through the village. It moves between homes and across rooftops. It touches walls that absorbed sunlight many hours ago. It slips through open spaces and narrow passages. Then it moves onward toward the river once again. There is something comforting about this hour. The demands of tomorrow have not yet arrived. The memory of yesterday has grown distant. Only the present remains. A quiet present. A peaceful present. One that asks nothing except rest. The ancient world breathes slowly beneath the stars. The Nile flows steadily beside it. The fields sleep. The workshops sleep. The fishermen sleep. The farmers sleep. Even the dust upon the road seems content to remain exactly where it is. And so the long night continues, gentle and unbroken, holding the village beside the river in a calm stillness that feels as endless as the sky itself. The night continues to stretch across the Nile Valley, calm and untroubled. The darkness no longer feels like something that arrived. It feels like something that has always been here, resting gently over the river, the fields, and the sleeping village. The stars remain bright above. Their light is soft and distant, touching the land so lightly that it barely seems to reach the earth at all. Yet somehow the rooftops, the riverbanks, and the quiet paths between homes seem to carry a faint glow from the heavens. The Nile flows beneath that sky. Steady. Patient. Unchanging. Its waters move through the darkness with the same quiet certainty they carried through the daylight hours. The current slides past reeds and mud banks, around small bends in the shoreline, carrying reflections of stars along with it. If someone were standing awake beside the river, they might hear the faintest sound of water meeting land. A gentle touch. A soft whisper. Then silence again. But no one stands there now. The village sleeps. Inside the mud-brick homes, the night has settled deeply. Bodies rest on woven mats that have been used night after night, year after year. The familiar texture beneath them offers comfort. The walls around them feel safe and known. Children sleep without concern for tomorrow. Their days are filled with learning, helping, observing, and growing. Yet even childhood here follows the rhythms of the village. The young wake early. They help carry water. They learn simple tasks. They watch the adults around them. And little by little, they become part of the daily life that surrounds them. But tonight there is no learning. No carrying. No helping. Only rest. A small child turns slightly in sleep, then becomes still again. The movement is brief. The silence returns immediately. Nearby, an older family member sleeps deeply after a long day of work. Strong hands that spent hours handling tools now lie motionless. Arms that lifted baskets and worked in the fields rest quietly. The body knows how to recover when given the chance. The night offers that chance. Outside, the village paths remain empty. Earlier they were alive with movement. Workers heading toward the fields. Merchants carrying goods. Children following parents. Animals moving between homes and storage areas. Now all those signs of life have disappeared into stillness. The paths wait patiently for morning. The dust waits. The doorways wait. The tools wait. Everything seems content to remain exactly where it is. Farther from the village, the fields stretch toward the darkness. Though invisible in many places, they remain present. Rows of crops. Patches of soil. Narrow paths worn smooth by countless footsteps. These fields have shaped the lives of generations. Children grow up walking among them. Adults spend their days tending them. Elders remember years of good harvests and difficult seasons. The fields connect every life in the village. Tonight they rest beneath the stars. The earth cools slowly after the heat of the day. A faint breeze moves across the open land. It bends a few stalks of grain. It stirs dry grass near irrigation channels. Then it fades once more. The silence remains. Near the riverbank, fishing boats rest where they were tied earlier. Their wooden frames shift gently whenever the current tugs against them. The movement is so slight that it feels almost imagined. The fishermen who own them are asleep now. Their nets hang nearby, drying in the cool night air. Tomorrow, before sunrise, they will return to the river. They will untie ropes. They will push away from shore. They will begin another day. But none of that matters yet. The night still belongs to rest. Above, the stars continue their slow journey across the sky. The movement is invisible from moment to moment. Yet hour by hour the heavens quietly change. The ancient people sleeping below do not measure these movements precisely. They do not need to. They understand time through different rhythms. The rising of the river. The changing seasons. The warmth of the sun. The coolness of night. The return of harvest. The return of flood. Life moves in cycles, and those cycles are enough. Inside a small home near the center of the village, an elderly man sleeps peacefully. His life has been filled with the same routines repeated across many years. He has watched children grow. He has watched fields change through countless seasons. He has seen the river rise and fall again and again. Now, in this quiet hour, all those memories rest alongside him. Nothing needs to be remembered tonight. Nothing needs to be planned. The darkness asks nothing. The night expects nothing. It simply provides a pause. A gentle space between one day's labor and the next. The Nile continues flowing. The stars continue shining. The breeze continues wandering through the village. And the ancient world remains wrapped in calm stillness, drifting peacefully through the deepest hours before dawn, when the first faint hints of morning still remain far beyond the horizon, waiting patiently for their time to come. The night remains deep and quiet over the Nile Valley, though somewhere beyond the horizon, unseen and unfelt by those asleep, the world is already beginning its slow turn toward another day. For now, however, darkness still holds the land gently in its embrace. The village rests. The river flows. The stars continue their silent journey overhead. Nothing else is required. The Nile moves through the darkness with the same steady confidence it carried through every hour before. It glides past the sleeping village as though it knows exactly where it belongs. Its waters touch familiar banks shaped by generations of hands, generations of floods, generations of lives built around its presence. The river is never truly silent. Even now, tiny sounds rise from its surface. A ripple touching mud. A soft movement among reeds. A quiet shift of water around a moored boat. Each sound appears briefly and then fades back into the larger stillness. Nothing disturbs the night. Everything belongs to it. Along the riverbank, the reeds sway gently when touched by the occasional breeze. Their shadows blend into the darkness, almost invisible beneath the starlight. Yet they remain there, standing patiently as they have through countless seasons. The coolness of the night air has settled fully now. The heat of the previous day feels distant. The earth still holds some warmth deep within it, but the surface has become comfortable and calm. Stone pathways have cooled. Mud-brick walls no longer radiate heat. The entire village seems to have relaxed into the softness of the night. Inside the homes, sleep continues. Families rest together in familiar arrangements. The youngest children sleep deeply, their dreams simple and gentle. Older children lie nearby, already learning the rhythms of village life, already becoming part of the routines that shape every day. In ancient Egypt, childhood was rarely separate from the work of the world around it. Children learned by watching. They learned by carrying small things. They learned by helping where they could. They learned the shape of daily life not through lessons alone, but through participation. A young child might spend a day following a parent through the village paths. Watching bread being prepared. Watching water being carried. Watching grain being stored. Watching tools being repaired. The world itself became their teacher. But tonight, all those lessons are resting. The children sleep. The parents sleep. The work sleeps. Only the river remains awake. Inside one small home, a boy sleeps beside a woven basket he helped carry earlier in the day. It was not heavy by an adult's measure, but it felt important to him. The task was small, yet meaningful. Tomorrow there will be other small tasks. Another journey for water. Another errand. Another opportunity to observe the adults around him. In this way, childhood unfolds slowly. Not as a separate world, but as part of the larger life of the village. Outside, the village remains still. The pathways are empty. The workshops are dark. Storage buildings stand quietly beneath the stars. Even the animals remain at rest. A donkey shifts slightly in sleep near a shelter wall, then becomes motionless again. The movement lasts only a moment. Silence returns immediately. The stars above continue their slow migration across the sky. Though no one watches them now, they mark the passage of the night. Their positions change little by little. The heavens move with a patience that mirrors the river below. Time passes quietly here. Not measured by clocks. Not counted by minutes. But felt through cycles. The cycle of daylight and darkness. The cycle of planting and harvest. The cycle of childhood and adulthood. The cycle of work and rest. Everything belongs to these rhythms. Far beyond the village, the fields continue sleeping beneath the sky. The crops wait for sunlight. The irrigation channels wait for workers. The soil waits for footsteps. Nothing is in a hurry. The earth understands patience. Near the river, a fishing net hangs from a wooden frame where it was left after the day's work. The fibers sway faintly in the cool breeze. Tomorrow the net will return to the water. Tomorrow it will be cast into the Nile once again. But tonight it rests. Like everything else. Inside another home, an elderly woman sleeps peacefully. Years ago, she was a child moving through these same village paths. She carried water. She learned household tasks. She watched the adults around her and slowly grew into their world. Now she rests while another generation of children sleeps nearby, following the same rhythms, learning the same patterns of daily life. The village changes over time. Faces change. Names change. Yet many routines remain familiar. Morning arrives. Work begins. Evening returns. Night settles. And the cycle continues. The darkness remains calm. The river remains steady. The stars remain bright. And the sleeping village drifts quietly through the final deep hours of night, held gently beside the Nile, where childhood, adulthood, labor, and rest all blend together into the slow and timeless rhythm of ancient life. The night continues its quiet journey over the Nile Valley, calm and unbroken. The village remains asleep beneath the stars, while the river moves steadily through the darkness, carrying with it the same gentle rhythm it has carried for countless generations. Nothing rushes. Nothing demands attention. The world seems content to remain exactly as it is. The Nile glides past the village, its waters dark beneath the night sky. Along the riverbank, reeds stand motionless for long stretches before a faint breeze causes them to sway. Their movement is small and graceful, almost like a whisper passing through the darkness. The air feels cool now. Not cold. Just comfortably cool after the long heat of the previous day. This is the hour when the earth seems to breathe most slowly. The warmth stored in the ground continues to fade. The walls of the homes feel calm to the touch. The dusty roads rest beneath a thin layer of starlight. Everything appears softened. Inside the village, families continue sleeping peacefully. Children lie beside parents, grandparents, brothers, and sisters. The homes are simple, but they provide shelter from the sun, protection from the wind, and a familiar place to rest at the end of each day. For a child in ancient Egypt, life began within these small spaces. The home was more than a building. It was a place of learning. A place of observation. A place where daily routines quietly shape the future. A young girl might spend her days watching bread being prepared. She would see grain ground into flour. She would watch water being mixed into dough. She would notice how carefully the fire was tended. At first she would only observe. Later she might help with small tasks. Over time those small tasks would become familiar. And eventually they would become part of her daily life. Learning happened slowly. Naturally. Through repetition. Through participation. Through patience. The same was true for boys. A boy might follow his father to the fields. At first he would simply watch. He would see how tools were carried. How irrigation channels were maintained. How crops were checked. How the soil responded to water and sunlight. Year after year, these lessons would accumulate. Not through formal instruction alone, but through experience. The village itself became a classroom. The river became a teacher. The fields became a teacher. The workshops became teachers. Every part of daily life offered lessons. And yet childhood was not only about learning work. There were quieter moments too. Moments spent sitting in the shade during the hottest part of the day. Moments spent listening to stories told by older family members. Moments spent watching boats move slowly along the Nile. Moments spent simply existing within the rhythm of the village. Those moments were often brief. Life required effort from nearly everyone. But they existed nonetheless. And perhaps because they were simple, they carried their own kind of comfort. Outside, the village remains still. No voices travel through the night. No footsteps cross the dusty roads. The workshops remain dark. The storage buildings remain closed. Even the animals rest quietly. A dog sleeping near a doorway lifts its head for a moment, then settles back down. Silence returns. The stars continue moving slowly across the heavens. Their progress is almost impossible to notice from one moment to the next. Yet hour by hour they shift. The night itself moves forward. Though it feels endless, it is not. Far beyond the eastern horizon, hidden from sight, the first distant signs of morning are slowly approaching. The sleeping villagers do not know it yet. They remain wrapped in darkness and rest. For them, the day has not begun. The demands of work have not returned. The fields are still waiting. The boats are still tied to shore. The bread ovens remain cool. The tools remain untouched. Everything continues to rest. The Nile flows on. A fisherman sleeps beside nets that will soon return to the water. A farmer sleeps after a day spent beneath the sun. A child sleeps after learning, helping, watching, and growing. An elder sleeps surrounded by memories of many similar nights. Together they share the same darkness. The same cool air. The same stars. The same river. And as the ancient village drifts peacefully through the final quiet hours before dawn, the world remains calm and gentle, held within a silence so complete that even time itself seems content to move softly, one breath at a time, beside the endless waters of the Nile. The night has become very old now. It stretches across the Nile Valley with a softness that feels almost weightless. The darkness remains, but somewhere beyond the edge of the world, dawn is slowly making its long approach. It is still far away. The stars continue to shine. The village continues to sleep. Yet the night has reached that quiet hour when everything feels especially still. The Nile flows onward. The river has witnessed countless nights like this one. It has reflected stars above ancient villages for generations beyond counting. It has flowed beside children who would one day become farmers, fishermen, bakers, scribes, and builders. It has flowed beside elders whose memories stretched back through many seasons of flood and harvest. Tonight it continues that same patient journey. The water slips through the darkness without effort. The current carries fragments of reflected starlight downstream. Tiny ripples appear and disappear. Nothing remains fixed. Everything moves gently forward. Along the riverbank, reeds stand quietly against the night sky. The breeze has become lighter now, touching them only occasionally. Most of the time they remain perfectly still, their shadows blending into the darkness. The air is cool and comfortable. The earth feels rested. The heat of yesterday seems very distant. Inside the village, sleep remains deep. The homes are quiet. The workshops are quiet. The storage buildings are quiet. The dusty paths between houses remain empty. The entire village seems suspended in a peaceful pause between one day and the next. Inside one home, a young child sleeps soundly. The child does not yet understand how much work surrounds daily life. Not fully. There is still wonder in simple things. Watching birds near the river. Following an older sibling through the village. Listening to conversations between adults. Watching dough become bread. Watching nets being repaired. The world is still filled with discovery. Yet even at a young age, life is already teaching its lessons. A child in ancient Egypt learns quickly that every meal requires effort. Bread requires grain. Grain requires fields. Fields require water. Water requires labor. The chain continues outward through every part of life. Nothing appears by magic. Everything comes from work. But those lessons arrive slowly, over years, carried through observation and experience rather than explanation. And tonight, even those lessons sleep. Nearby, an older child rests after a day spent helping with simple tasks. Perhaps carrying water. Perhaps gathering fuel for a cooking fire. Perhaps assisting with animals or household chores. The responsibilities are small compared to those of adults. Yet they are real. Childhood here is not entirely separate from the working world. It grows alongside it. The village itself gently prepares children for the lives they will eventually lead. Outside, the stars continue their slow movement across the heavens. No clocks mark the passing hours. No bells ring in the darkness. Only the sky changes. Only the river flows. Only time moves quietly forward. Near the edge of the village, a fishing boat rests against its mooring. Its wooden hull shifts almost imperceptibly with the movement of water beneath it. The fisherman who owns it sleeps nearby. Tomorrow he will wake before the sun. He will untie the rope. He will push the boat into the river. He will cast his net into the water. These actions have been repeated so many times that they require little thought. Routine becomes part of the body itself. The same is true for farmers. The same is true for bakers. The same is true for builders. The same is true for children learning their first responsibilities. Life moves through repetition. Not dull repetition. Comforting repetition. The kind that creates familiarity. The kind that allows people to know where they belong. The kind that turns ordinary tasks into the structure of daily existence. The village rests within that structure now. Every person sleeping beneath these roofs is connected to it. Every family depends upon it. Every generation inherits it. Farther away, the fields remain silent. The crops stand motionless beneath the stars. Irrigation channels rest quietly in the darkness. The soil waits patiently. Nothing asks for attention yet. Nothing calls anyone from their bed. There is still time before morning. Still time before footsteps return to the dusty roads. Still time before bread ovens begin warming. Still time before the first fishing boats leave the shore. For now, the world remains wrapped in night. The Nile continues flowing. The stars continue shining. The village continues sleeping. And in this peaceful hour, childhood itself seems to rest alongside everything else, not separate from the village, but woven into it, growing quietly within the same rhythms that guide the river, the fields, the families, and the countless ordinary lives that unfold beside the waters of ancient Egypt. The night continues, calm and unbroken, drifting softly over the Nile Valley. Though dawn is slowly drawing nearer beyond the distant horizon, the village remains asleep. The darkness still belongs to the land, and the land accepts it without question. The river flows on. Its waters move steadily through the quiet world, carrying the reflections of stars that shimmer briefly and then disappear into the current. The Nile has no need to hurry toward morning. It simply continues its journey, as patient now as it was centuries before and centuries yet to come. Along its banks, the reeds stand silent. The fields rest. The boats remain tied where they were left. Everything is waiting. Inside the village, sleep holds firm. The homes are still, their mud-brick walls keeping the cool night air at a comfortable distance. Families rest together on woven mats. The day's labor has completely released its grip. Tired muscles have softened. Busy thoughts have drifted away. For these few precious hours, there is only rest. A child sleeps near the doorway of a small home. Earlier in the day, that same child may have spent hours watching the adults around them. Watching how grain was stored. Watching how water was carried. Watching how a cooking fire was built and maintained. Children learn much by simply being present. They absorb routines the way the earth absorbs water. Slowly. Quietly. Without anyone noticing exactly when learning becomes understanding. One day a child watches. Later, the child helps. Eventually, the child knows. This is how many lessons pass from one generation to the next. Not through grand speeches. Not through written instruction alone. But through countless ordinary days. Through repetition. Through patience. Through living. The village itself teaches. The river teaches. The fields teach. Even the seasons teach. A child growing up here learns that life follows patterns larger than any individual person. The river rises. The river falls. Seeds are planted. Harvests are gathered. The sun returns each morning. Night returns each evening. These cycles become familiar companions throughout life. Outside, the stars continue their slow movement overhead. The sky feels enormous above the sleeping village. A blanket of darkness scattered with points of distant light. The stars shine over everyone equally. Over fishermen. Over farmers. Over merchants. Over builders. Over children and elders alike. The sky asks nothing of them. It simply remains. Near the edge of the village, a small breeze passes through again. It moves gently between buildings, stirring loose strands of reed and brushing against walls cooled by the night. Dust shifts slightly along a path before settling once more. The silence remains intact. Nothing disturbs it. Farther away, the fields lie beneath the stars. The crops wait patiently. Soon enough, workers will return. Soon enough, footsteps will cross the narrow paths. Soon enough, voices will rise into the morning air. But not yet. There is still darkness. Still quiet. Still rest. A young boy sleeping in one of the homes dreams without knowing it. Perhaps the dream is simple. A boat moving along the river. Birds rising from reeds. A walk beside a parent through the fields. Dreams often borrow from the ordinary world around us. And in ancient Egypt, the ordinary world was rich with small details. The smell of fresh bread. The feeling of warm dust beneath bare feet. The sight of sunlight reflecting from water. The sound of distant workers beginning their day. These simple experiences shaped childhood. Not comfort in the modern sense. Not endless leisure. But familiarity. Belonging. Participation in the life of the community. Children were not separate from the rhythms of the village. They grew within those rhythms. They learned them. Eventually they carried them forward. The night, however, makes no distinction. Children sleep. Adults sleep. Everyone rests beneath the same stars. The Nile continues its endless movement. A fishing net hangs motionless near the riverbank. A storage jar rests untouched inside a building. A farmer's tools wait quietly near a doorway. All signs of labor have been paused. Not abandoned. Only paused. Morning will return them to you soon enough. For now, they remain part of the stillness. The hours continue to drift by. The stars shift slightly farther across the sky. The air grows just a little cooler. The horizon remains dark. Yet somewhere beyond sight, the next day is slowly approaching. The village does not know it yet. The sleepers do not feel it yet. The river simply continues flowing. And the ancient world rests peacefully beside the Nile, suspended in that beautiful final stretch of night when everything feels quiet, safe, and timeless, and the soft rhythm of life itself seems to move no faster than the gentle current of the river beneath the stars. The final hours of night unfold slowly over the Nile Valley, so slowly that no one sleeping within the village could possibly notice the change. Darkness still covers the land. The stars still shine above. The river still flows beside the fields and homes. Yet somewhere far to the east, beyond deserts and distant horizons, the world is quietly preparing for another sunrise. For now, however, night remains. The Nile glides onward beneath the stars. Its waters carry the coolness of the dark hours, slipping past riverbanks shaped by countless seasons. The current remains steady and calm, neither fast nor slow. It moves with the same patient certainty that has guided life here for generations. Along the shoreline, small boats rest motionless. Their ropes are secure. Their nets are folded. Their owners sleep nearby. Everything is waiting for morning. The river seems content to wait as well. Inside the village, the homes remain silent. The mud-brick walls stand strong and quiet beneath the night sky. Some of these homes have sheltered families for many years. Children have been born within them. Elders have spent their final days within them. Countless meals have been prepared beside their walls. The homes are simple. Yet they are full of life. And tonight they are full of sleep. Inside one home, a young girl rests peacefully beside her family. Earlier in the day she may have helped grind grain, carry water, or assist with small household tasks. Nothing too heavy. Nothing beyond her ability. Yet enough to slowly teach the responsibilities that shape daily life. In ancient Egypt, childhood was not entirely separate from work. Children were expected to learn, to observe, to contribute when they could. Not because anyone wished to make life difficult, but because survival itself depended upon cooperation. Every pair of hands mattered. Even small hands. A child carrying a light basket was helping. A child gathering kindling was helping. A child watching and learning was preparing to help. The village depended upon these gradual lessons. And so childhood became intertwined with the ordinary responsibilities of community life. Yet there were still moments of play. Moments of curiosity. Moments of wonder. A child might chase birds along the riverbank. Might watch fish moving beneath clear water. Might sit beneath a shaded wall listening to stories told by older relatives. The world offered lessons everywhere. Some came through work. Some came through observation. Some came through simple experience. Outside, the stars continue their silent journey overhead. The sky appears unchanged from moment to moment. Yet slowly, steadily, it shifts. A bright star near the horizon moves lower. Another climbs slightly higher. The movement is almost impossible to see. But time continues nonetheless. The village remains asleep. A baker rests after yesterday's work. A fisherman rests beside his folded nets. A scribe rests after recording deliveries and harvest counts. A builder rests after lifting stone beneath the hot sun. Children rest among them. All share the same darkness. All share the same pause between one day and the next. The air remains cool. Perhaps cooler now than at any other point during the night. The warmth stored in the earth has nearly faded away. Stone floors feel calm beneath resting bodies. The breeze that occasionally moves through the village carries freshness from the river. It passes gently through narrow paths and open doorways. Then it disappears again. The silence remains complete. Near the edge of the settlement, storage buildings stand quietly in the darkness. Inside them, grain gathered from previous harvests waits patiently. These stores represent countless hours of labor. Countless journeys between field and village. Countless days beneath the sun. Yet tonight they ask for nothing. The grain rests. The workers rest. The village rests. The Nile continues flowing. Farther away, beyond the fields, beyond the cultivated land, the desert remains silent beneath the stars. Its vast stretches of sand lie untouched by the routines of village life. Yet even the desert belongs to the same night. The same sky. The same slow passage of time. Everything rests beneath one great darkness. And somewhere within that darkness, childhood continues its quiet journey as well. A child who sleeps tonight will wake tomorrow slightly older. Not enough to notice. Not enough to change anything immediately. Yet every day adds another lesson. Another observation. Another small responsibility. Another step toward adulthood. Growth happens quietly. Like the movement of stars. Like the flow of the Nile. Like the turning of the seasons. Slowly enough that no single moment feels important. Yet powerful enough to shape an entire life. The night drifts onward. The village remains asleep. The river remains steady. The stars remain bright. And the ancient world continues resting peacefully beside the Nile, wrapped in the gentle stillness that comes just before the first distant hint of dawn begins its slow and patient arrival. The night has become very quiet now. Not because it was noisy before, but because the silence itself seems deeper. The Nile Valley rests beneath the stars as though the entire world has settled into a long, peaceful breath. The river continues to flow, the fields continue to wait, and the village remains asleep. Still, the night is slowly changing. The darkness remains complete, yet somewhere beyond sight, the first preparations for morning have already begun. No one can see them. No one can hear them. But time continues its patient work. For now, however, the village belongs to sleep. The Nile moves gently through the darkness. Its waters glide past familiar banks lined with reeds and soft mud. The current carries small reflections of starlight that tremble on the surface before drifting away. The river has carried many things through the centuries. Boats, nets, grain, travelers, stories, and generations of children growing into adults. Tonight it carries only darkness and starlight. That is enough. Inside the village, homes remain still. The cool air of the late night settles softly around the sleeping families. The mud-brick walls, warm during the day, now feel calm and comfortable. Woven mats support tired bodies that have spent long hours working, learning, carrying, walking, and helping. For children, these hours of rest are especially important. Life in ancient Egypt often began early. Very early. A child did not spend years separated from the daily needs of the household. Instead, childhood slowly blended into responsibility. A young boy might wake before sunrise and accompany an older family member to the river. At first he would simply watch. He would observe how water was gathered, how boats were prepared, how nets were checked. Later, he might help carry something small. Perhaps a rope. Perhaps an empty basket. Perhaps a simple tool. Nothing difficult. Nothing beyond his strength. Yet these small actions mattered. They taught familiarity. They built confidence. They created understanding. A young girl might experience something similar within the household. She would watch bread being made, see grain being ground, observe food preparation, learn how clothing was repaired, learn how daily life was organized. Again, the lessons came gradually. No single day transformed a child into an adult. Growth happened through countless ordinary mornings and evenings. Through repetition. Through patience. Through participation. The village itself provided the education. Outside, the stars continue their slow movement. Though the sky still appears dark and endless, subtle changes are beginning to take place. Some stars now sit lower than they did earlier in the night. Others have shifted across the heavens. The movement is gentle, almost invisible. Yet it continues. Time never stops. Even while everyone sleeps. Near the riverbank, a fishing boat rocks slightly against its rope. The movement is small enough to go unnoticed by anyone asleep nearby. The water lifts it. The water lowers it. Then stillness returns. The fisherman who owns the boat sleeps peacefully. Tomorrow will bring another day of work. Another journey onto the Nile. Another cycle of effort and routine. But not yet. The night still protects this pause. Across the village, many children sleep without knowing how quickly these years pass. One day they are following older family members through dusty roads and shaded courtyards. One day they are carrying small baskets. One day they are learning names of tools and crops and animals. And before long, they find themselves participating fully in village life. The transition often happens so gradually that it is difficult to notice. A little more responsibility. A little more trust. A little more independence. The years move quietly. Much like the river itself. A farmer sleeping near the edge of the village shifts slightly beneath the light covering. His hands bear signs of long labor. The skin is rough from work. The muscles tired from repetition. Yet sleep softens everything. The body knows how to rest. The village knows how to rest. The earth itself seems to rest. Far beyond the homes, the fields remain silent beneath the stars. The crops wait patiently for sunlight. The irrigation channels wait for workers. The pathways wait for footsteps. Everything is prepared. Everything is ready. But nothing moves yet. The darkness remains. The Nile continues flowing. The stars continue shining. And the ancient world drifts peacefully through these final deep hours before dawn, where childhood, work, family, and community all rest together beneath the same quiet sky, waiting gently for another day to begin beside the timeless waters of the Nile. The night continues to linger over the Nile Valley, calm and patient, as though it is in no hurry to surrender its place to the coming day. The village remains asleep beneath the stars. The river continues its endless journey. The fields rest quietly in darkness. Everything feels suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. The Nile moves steadily through the land. Its waters slide past familiar shores where countless generations have stood before sunrise, waiting to begin another day. The river knows these rhythms well. It has watched children become adults. It has watched adults become elders. It has watched families grow, change, and continue. Yet the river itself remains unchanged. Always flowing. Always present. Tonight it carries only the reflections of stars and the silence of the sleeping world. The air is cool now, carrying a freshness that only comes during the deepest hours before dawn. It drifts through the village paths and around the corners of homes. It brushes against walls made from earth and straw. It slips through open spaces and settles softly wherever it can. Inside the homes, sleep remains deep. The day feels far away. The fields feel far away. Even the river feels distant to those resting within the shelter of their homes. A young child sleeps beside a parent, unaware of the quiet passage of time. The child has spent only a few years in this world, yet already the rhythms of village life are becoming familiar. The smell of bread baking. The sight of the river at sunrise. The sound of sandals on dusty roads. The warmth of sunlight against mud-brick walls. These small experiences gather slowly, forming the foundation of memory. Childhood in ancient Egypt was built from such moments. Not grand events. Not dramatic changes. But countless ordinary days. A morning carrying water. An afternoon sitting in the shade. An evening listening to older family members speak about harvests, floods, or distant relatives. Life moved gently forward through routine. And children learned by living within that routine. Nearby, an older sibling sleeps as well. Perhaps during the day they help more than the younger child. Perhaps they carry slightly heavier loads. Perhaps they watch younger brothers or sisters. Perhaps they assist in the fields or workshops. Responsibility arrives gradually. It rarely appears all at once. Each year adds a little more. Each season brings new understanding. A child does not wake one morning as an adult. The change happens quietly, almost invisibly, through thousands of ordinary moments. Outside, the stars continue their slow procession across the heavens. The sky still appears dark, but there is a subtle difference now. The darkness feels lighter somehow. Not yet morning. Not even close. Yet the deepest part of night is beginning to pass. The village does not notice. The sleepers continue resting. The Nile continues flowing. Near the riverbank, reeds sway faintly as a breeze passes through them. The movement lasts only a few seconds before stillness returns. Everything remains peaceful. Everything remains quiet. Farther away, the fields wait beneath the stars. These fields shape nearly every part of village life. The bread people eat. The grain stored for future months. The work that fills long days beneath the sun. Children grow up watching the fields. They learn when planting begins. They learn when harvest approaches. They learn how important water is. How important patience is. How important effort is. The fields teach lessons that cannot be rushed. And so does childhood. Many of the skills needed for life here require time to develop. Strength takes time. Knowledge takes time. Experience takes time. No one expects a child to know everything immediately. Instead, the village teaches slowly. One day at a time. One season at a time. One year at a time. The Nile itself seems to follow the same principle. It does not hurry toward the sea. It simply continues. Steady. Patient. Reliable. The same qualities are valued in daily life. A good farmer understands patience. A good fisherman understands patience. A good builder understands patience. And children learn patience simply by growing up within this world. Inside one home, an elderly grandparent sleeps peacefully. Long ago, that elder was once a child following parents through the same village paths. Long ago, they learned the same routines, carried the same kinds of baskets, walked the same dusty roads, watched the same river. Now another generation follows those same patterns. The faces change. The years pass. Yet much remains familiar. The village continues. The river continues. Life continues. The cool air drifts quietly through the sleeping settlement. The stars shine overhead. The Nile carries darkness and reflection alike. And as the final hours before dawn slowly unfold, the ancient world remains wrapped in calm stillness, where childhood grows gently alongside labor, family, and community, all moving together within the timeless rhythm of life beside the Nile. The night moves onward with quiet determination, though it does so gently that no one sleeping within the village can sense its progress. The darkness still covers the Nile Valley, but it is no longer the same darkness that arrived many hours ago. Time has been moving all along. Softly. Patiently. Like the river. The Nile continues its endless journey through the sleeping land. Its waters glide beneath the stars, carrying reflections that shimmer briefly before dissolving into the current. Along the banks, reeds stand in quiet rows, their shadows blending with the darkness around them. The river feels especially calm at this hour. The busy sounds of daylight are absent. No boats cross the water. No voices travel over its surface. No workers stand at the shoreline. There is only the current. Only the stars. Only the night. The village remains asleep. Mud-brick homes rest beneath the sky, their shapes softened by darkness. Inside, families continue sleeping peacefully. The cool air of the late night drifts through open spaces, bringing comfort after the heat of the previous day. A child sleeps near a wall warmed by yesterday's sunlight. The warmth has faded now, but a faint trace remains. The child dreams quietly. Perhaps of familiar things. The river. Birds. Boats. The faces of family members. Children often dream from the world they know. And the world of ancient Egypt is full of simple, repeating images. Fields stretching toward the horizon. Water glimmering beneath sunlight. Donkeys carrying loads along dusty paths. Women preparing bread. Men repairing nets. Merchants moving goods through crowded spaces. The village itself becomes the landscape of memory. The landscape of childhood. During daylight hours, children are rarely isolated from the activities around them. Life happens in shared spaces. Work happens in shared spaces. Learning happens in shared spaces. A young child might spend an entire day simply observing. Watching how people speak. Watching how tools are used. Watching how tasks are completed. At first these observations seem ordinary. But slowly they become knowledge. The lessons accumulate almost unnoticed. How to carry something carefully. How to tie a simple knot. How to recognize when grain is ready. How to behave respectfully toward elders. How to contribute to family life. These lessons are rarely separate from daily living. They are woven into it. Outside, the stars continue their slow movement. The sky remains dark, yet the eastern horizon now carries the faintest suggestion of change. Not light. Not yet. Only a subtle softening. A hint so small that it would be easy to miss. The night still rules the land. The village still sleeps. But dawn is beginning its long approach. The river seems unaware. Or perhaps the river simply treats every hour the same. It continues flowing without concern for darkness or daylight. Its patience is endless. Near the edge of the village, a fishing net hangs from a wooden frame. The fibers move slightly whenever a breeze passes through. Tomorrow that net will return to the water. Tomorrow it will help provide food for a family. But tonight it remains still. Like everything else. A young boy sleeping nearby will one day learn how to use such a net. Not immediately. Not all at once. The lessons will come gradually. First through watching. Then through helping. Then through practice. Childhood here unfolds through participation. Skills are not simply explained. They are lived. A child learns by standing beside someone who already knows. A parent. An older sibling. An aunt. An uncle. A neighbor. The entire village contributes to the education of its young. Knowledge moves through the community like water moving through irrigation channels. Slowly. Steadily. Naturally. Far beyond the homes, the fields remain silent. The crops wait beneath the stars. The soil rests. The pathways remain empty. No footsteps cross them yet. No voices break the stillness. There is still time before morning. Still time before labor returns. Still time before ovens are lit and boats are launched. The night continues to hold the world gently in place. Inside another home, an elder sleeps peacefully. Many years ago, they too watched older family members perform daily tasks. Many years ago, they too learned by observation and repetition. The cycle continues. Generation after generation. Not because anyone commands it, but because life itself teaches it. The village changes slowly over time. New children are born. Older generations pass away. Yet the rhythm remains. The Nile remains. The stars remain. The fields remain. And childhood continues to unfold within this familiar landscape, shaped by family, community, work, and patience. The air remains cool. The river remains steady. The darkness remains soft. And as the first almost invisible hints of dawn continue their distant approach, the ancient village sleeps peacefully beside the Nile, wrapped in the quiet comfort of another night that has carried countless dreams across the timeless waters of Egypt. The night has begun its slow retreat, though only the stars seem aware of it. The village still sleeps. The Nile still flows through darkness. The fields remain quiet beneath the sky. Yet something subtle is changing along the distant eastern horizon. The darkness there is no longer quite as deep as it was. It remains night, but the first gentle signs of morning are beginning their long journey toward the village. No one notices. Not yet. The people sleep. The animals rest. The boats remain tied to the shore. For a little while longer, the ancient world belongs entirely to silence. The Nile continues its patient movement. Water slips past riverbanks worn smooth by centuries of floods and footsteps. The current carries tiny reflections of stars downstream, scattering them across the surface before gathering them again. The river never appears hurried. It has nowhere urgent to be. Its pace remains steady and calm. Perhaps that is why life beside the Nile often follows a similar rhythm. The river teaches patience simply by existing. The people who live along its banks learn that many things cannot be rushed. Seeds require time. Children require time. Knowledge requires time. Even the river itself shapes the land slowly, over generations rather than days. Inside one home, a young child remains asleep. The child's breathing is slow and even. A hand rests loosely against a woven mat. The worries and responsibilities of adulthood remain far away. Yet childhood in ancient Egypt is never entirely free from responsibility. From an early age, children begin to understand that they are part of something larger than themselves. Part of a family. Part of a household. Part of a village. Part of a rhythm that existed before they were born. As they grow, small expectations arrive naturally. A simple errand. A small basket to carry. A younger sibling to watch. A task to observe and eventually learn. These expectations are not unusual. They are simply part of daily life. The village depends upon cooperation. Every person contributes in some way. Even the youngest members slowly begin finding their place. Yet there is still room for curiosity. Still room for wonder. A child may spend long moments watching sunlight dance on the river, or observing birds moving through reeds, or listening to stories told beneath the evening sky. Learning happens through work, but it also happens through observation, through paying attention, through simply being present. Outside, the cool air drifts through narrow village paths. The ground beneath those paths is smooth from countless footsteps. Generations have walked these same routes between homes, workshops, fields, and riverbanks. Children learn those paths almost as soon as they can walk. At first they stay close to parents. Later they move more confidently. Soon they know every turn, every doorway, every familiar landmark. The village becomes a map carried inside memory. Near the edge of the settlement, a baker sleeps peacefully. Only a few hours from now, the ovens will begin warming again. Grain will be ground. Dough will be prepared. Bread will fill the air with its familiar scent. Children often grow up surrounded by these daily rituals. They watch ingredients become meals. They watch work become nourishment. They learn that food arrives through effort and care. These are quiet lessons, but powerful ones. The eastern sky continues its gradual change. The stars remain visible, yet a faint softness now touches the horizon. Not light exactly. More like a gentle easing of darkness. The night still feels complete. Still peaceful. Still protective. Yet dawn has begun its distant approach. The Nile reflects this subtle change almost before the land does. The surface of the water seems slightly less dark than before. Only slightly. Enough to notice if someone were awake and watching carefully. But almost everyone sleeps. A fisherman rests beside folded nets. A farmer rests after yesterday's labor. A child rests after a day of learning, helping, and growing. An elder rests with decades of memories gathered quietly behind closed eyes. The village remains united in sleep. The same stars shine above every roof. The same river flows beside every home. The same cool breeze drifts through every path. Far beyond the village, the fields wait patiently. Soon workers will return. Soon sandals will press into the soil. Soon voices will rise into the morning air. But there is no need to hurry toward those moments. The night still has time left to give. The darkness still offers its comfort. The silence still holds the world gently in place. And so the ancient village continues sleeping beside the Nile, where childhood unfolds one quiet day at a time, shaped by family, labor, patience, and belonging, all carried forward by the same steady rhythms that guide the river beneath the slowly fading stars. The eastern horizon continues to soften, though the village remains wrapped in darkness. The change is so gradual that it feels less like an arrival and more like a gentle unfolding. The stars still shine above the Nile Valley. The river still moves through shadow. The homes still shelter sleeping families. Night remains the keeper of the world. For now. The Nile glides quietly between its banks. Its waters seem darker in the center, lighter near the edges where faint traces of the coming dawn begin to touch the surface. Small ripples appear and vanish. Reflections stretch and break apart before gathering again. Nothing about the river feels hurried. It accepts every hour equally. The bright heat of afternoon. The golden light of evening. The cool silence of night. The pale beginnings of morning. All pass across its surface. The river simply continues. Inside the village, sleep still holds most of its people. A child lies curled beneath a light covering, resting deeply after a day spent following familiar routines. The child's world is not large in distance, but it is rich in detail. The pathway between home and river. The shade beside a wall during the hottest hours. The smell of baking bread. The sound of grain being ground. The sight of workers returning home beneath the evening sky. These small experiences fill childhood. Again and again, the same scenes appear. Again and again, the same lessons quietly take root. Many modern ideas imagine childhood as a separate place, distant from the concerns of adults. But here, beside the Nile, childhood grows directly within the life of the community. Children see work. They see effort. They see responsibility. Not as distant concepts, but as ordinary parts of daily existence. A young girl might spend years watching older relatives prepare food before she becomes skilled at doing it herself. A young boy might spend years observing fishing or farming before taking on larger responsibilities. Knowledge arrives slowly. Like water filling a channel. Not all at once. But steadily. The village understands this rhythm. No crop grows overnight. No child grows overnight. Everything requires time. Outside, a faint breeze passes through the narrow paths between homes. It carries the coolness of the river and the freshness that often comes just before dawn. Loose strands of reed rustle softly where they hang from roofs or fences. The sound is brief. Then stillness returns. Near the edge of the settlement, workshops remain dark and quiet. The carpenter's tools rest where they were left. The stoneworker's materials wait patiently. The potter's unfinished vessels sit in silence. Children often spend time around such places, watching skilled hands shape useful things from simple materials. A lump of clay becomes a vessel. A rough piece of wood becomes a tool. A child observing these transformations learns more than technique. They learn patience. They learn attention. They learn that useful things usually require effort. The lessons are everywhere. Not written on walls. Not spoken as formal teachings. Simply present within everyday life. The stars overhead continue their slow retreat. Some now sit lower in the sky. Others have disappeared beyond the horizon. The eastern darkness grows slightly lighter. Only slightly. The village still sleeps. The animals still rest. The ovens remain cool. The boats remain tied to shore. Yet morning is moving closer. Far out in the fields, the earth waits quietly. These fields have shaped countless childhoods. Children learn the names of crops before they learn many other things. They learn the importance of water. The importance of seasons. The importance of patience. A young child may not understand every detail of agriculture, but they understand its presence. They see adults leaving for the fields. They see harvests arriving. They see grain stored carefully for the future. The fields become part of their understanding of how the world works. Inside another home, an elder remains asleep. Long ago, that elder watched the same routines unfold. Long ago, they stood where today's children stand. The continuity of village life is one of its quiet strengths. Knowledge passes from one generation to the next without needing grand ceremonies. It passes through observation, through shared work, through ordinary conversation, through years spent living together. The Nile continues flowing beside them all. Generation after generation. Child after child. Season after season. The river watches without judgment. It carries water to the fields, food to the villages, travelers to distant places. And time itself seems to move with its current. The eastern horizon grows a little softer still. The stars remain, but fewer now. The darkness remains, but thinner. The village remains asleep, held gently within the final quiet moments before dawn. And so the ancient world continues resting beside the Nile, where childhood is shaped not by ease, but by participation, patience, and belonging, growing slowly within the steady rhythms of family, labor, and the ever-flowing river. The first true signs of dawn are still hidden, but the night can no longer keep them entirely away. The eastern horizon has begun to soften into a pale gray, so faint that it seems more imagined than real. The stars still fill much of the sky, yet their brightness is no longer quite as strong as it was a few hours earlier. One by one, they are beginning to surrender their place to the coming day. The village remains asleep. The Nile continues flowing. The fields continue waiting. The world moves quietly toward morning. The river appears different now. Not because it has changed, but because the light around it is changing. The surface no longer disappears completely into darkness. A faint silver tone begins to gather upon the water, revealing gentle currents that were hidden during the deepest hours of night. The Nile seems to awaken before the people do. Its flowing surface catches the earliest hints of approaching daylight and carries them downstream. A ripple forms. A reflection shifts. The current continues onward. Along the banks, reeds emerge slowly from the darkness. Their outlines become easier to see. Shapes that were once only shadows now begin to take form. The land is returning. Not suddenly. Very slowly. Inside the homes, families continue sleeping. The air remains cool and comfortable. The quiet of night still surrounds everything. Yet some subtle change seems to be spreading through the village. The long pause between days is nearing its end. A young child sleeps deeply beside older family members. The child does not know that another day is approaching. Another day of watching, learning, helping, growing. Childhood continues through these small repetitions. The same paths, the same chores, the same familiar faces. Many of the lessons that shape life here are learned not through unusual events but through ordinary mornings just like the one now approaching. A child wakes. A parent wakes. Tasks begin. Conversations begin. The village comes alive once more. Then evening arrives. Night follows. And the cycle repeats. Over years, those repetitions build knowledge. Build skill. Build understanding. The child who once watched others carry water eventually carries it with confidence. The child who once observed bread being baked eventually helps prepare it. The child who once followed adults through the village eventually walks those paths alone. Growth often feels invisible while it is happening. Only later does its progress become clear. Outside, the first birds are beginning to stir. Not many. Just a few. A faint rustle from somewhere near the riverbank. A soft movement among the reeds. The sounds are small enough to blend into the remaining silence. Yet they mark the beginning of change. The night is slowly loosening its hold. Near a storage building, a donkey shifts its weight and settles again. Not fully awake. Not fully asleep. Caught between darkness and dawn. Much of the village exists in that same quiet state. Still resting. Yet slowly approaching wakefulness. The eastern sky grows lighter. The change remains gentle. No bright colors appear yet. Only pale gray spreading gradually across the horizon. The stars nearest that horizon begin disappearing. Higher above, others continue shining. For a little while longer, night and morning share the sky together. The Nile reflects both. Darkness above. Light approaching. Current beneath. The river carries all of it. Farther from the village, the fields become slightly more visible. Their outlines emerge from shadow. Paths appear. Irrigation channels begin to take shape. The earth seems to stretch itself after a long rest. Soon workers will return. Soon children will wake and begin another day beside the river. Soon ovens will be lit. Soon fishing boats will leave the shore. But none of those things have happened yet. The moment remains peaceful. The world remains quiet. Inside one home, an elder begins to stir very slightly. Not awake. Only shifting position. The body senses what the eyes do not yet see. Morning is approaching. Many years of routine have taught it that. The same routine followed since childhood. The same routine followed through adulthood. The same routine now carried into old age. Life beside the Nile is shaped by these rhythms. Children learn them early. They learn when work begins. When rest begins. When the fields require attention. When the river must be visited. The schedule of life is written not by clocks, but by the world itself. By sunlight. By seasons. By water. And by the steady needs of family and community. The horizon grows brighter still. The stars continue fading. The river continues flowing. The village continues sleeping. Yet the ancient world is beginning to awaken. Slowly. Gently. Without hurry. As another day approaches the banks of the Nile, where childhood unfolds not in comfort alone, but in participation, responsibility, curiosity, and belonging, all woven together beneath the endless cycle of river, earth, and sky. The horizon now carries a thin band of pale light. It stretches quietly across the eastern edge of the world, soft and delicate, as though morning is carefully testing the air before fully arriving. The stars still remain overhead, but fewer now. Their distant light grows weaker against the slow approach of dawn. The village continues to rest. Yet the night is changing. The Nile notices first. Its waters catch the faint brightness and spread it across the surface in long silver ribbons. The river no longer appears as a dark shape hidden within the landscape. It begins to reveal itself again, showing curves and gentle movements that were concealed during the deepest hours of darkness. The current remains calm. Always calm. It carries the first hints of daylight just as easily as it carried the stars. Along the riverbank, reeds emerge more clearly from the shadows. Their slender forms stand quietly against the growing light. Small droplets of moisture cling to some of them, reflecting the pale sky above. The air remains cool. Perhaps cooler than it will be at any other point today. For a brief time, the world feels balanced between night and morning. Neither fully present. Both gently overlapping. Inside the homes, sleep is beginning to lighten. Not because anyone has opened their eyes. Not because anyone has risen, but because the body understands the rhythm of the day. For generations, people here have woken with the approach of dawn. The routine is deeply familiar. A farmer's body remembers. A fisherman's body remembers. A baker's body remembers. Even a child's body slowly learns. The village has followed this pattern for so long that it feels almost part of the land itself. A young boy sleeping near the doorway of a home shifts slightly beneath a woven covering. The movement is small. His eyes remain closed. Yet sleep is no longer as deep as it was a few hours earlier. Soon he will wake. Soon he will step into another ordinary day. And like so many days before it, that ordinary day will quietly shape who he becomes. Childhood often grows through such ordinary mornings. A task repeated many times. A lesson observed many times. A path walked many times. What feels ordinary today becomes knowledge tomorrow. The boy may accompany an older relative to the river. He may help carry something small. He may watch repairs being made to a fishing net. He may simply observe. All of these experiences matter. All of them become part of his understanding of the world. Nearby, another child sleeps beside her mother. Soon she too will wake into familiar routines. Perhaps there will be grain to grind, water to carry, food to prepare, younger siblings to help watch. The responsibilities remain small for now, but they are real. Each year brings a little more. Each season brings a little more. Childhood here is not a sudden preparation for adulthood. It is a gradual journey toward it. Outside, the village remains mostly silent. Yet a few signs of waking life begin to appear. A bird calls once from somewhere near the river. Then silence returns. Another bird answers from farther away. The sounds are soft, tentative, as though even the birds are waking slowly. The eastern sky brightens a little more. Gray becomes pale silver. The outlines of buildings become clearer. The dusty paths between homes begin to emerge from darkness. The village is returning to view. Near the workshops, tools remain untouched. Near the storage buildings, grain remains safely stored. Near the riverbank, boats continue resting against their moorings. Everything waits. Not for long now, but for a little longer. The Nile flows beside it all. Its steady movement never changes. Children grow. Adults age. Generations come and go. The river continues. A child born beside its waters learns early that life follows rhythms larger than any one person. The flood season arrives. The flood season ends. Seeds are planted. Harvests are gathered. The sun rises. The sun sets. The river flows. These truths remain constant. Perhaps that is why patience becomes such an important lesson. A lesson learned not through words alone but through living. Children learn patience while waiting for crops to grow. While learning a skill. While watching older relatives work. While growing themselves. The village teaches patience because the land teaches patience. The river teaches patience. And life beside the Nile teaches patience. The horizon continues brightening. The stars continue fading. The cool air drifts gently through the waking world. Inside the homes, sleep grows lighter with every passing moment. Soon the first doors will open. Soon footsteps will return to the dusty paths. Soon smoke will rise from cooking fires. But for now, the village remains suspended in one final peaceful moment between darkness and daylight, resting beside the ancient river where childhood unfolds slowly, quietly, and steadily within the endless rhythms of family, work, and the turning world. The pale light along the eastern horizon grows a little wider. It is still gentle, still soft enough that the village remains mostly asleep, but morning can no longer be hidden. The darkness that covered the Nile Valley through the long night is beginning to thin, retreating quietly toward the western sky. The stars continue fading. A few bright ones remain overhead, but many have already disappeared into the growing light. The Nile reflects this change before anything else. Its surface now carries a muted silver glow. The river seems broader in the early light, revealing gentle curves and channels that darkness had concealed. Small ripples move across the water, catching pieces of the brightening sky and carrying them downstream. The river appears awake. Yet it never truly slept. It simply continued its endless journey while the world rested beside it. Along the banks, reeds stand clearly visible now. Their slender shapes sway faintly in the cool breeze that still drifts across the valley. The air feels fresh and clean, carrying the scent of water, damp earth, and distant fields. It is a peaceful hour. An hour that belongs neither fully to night nor fully to day. Inside the village, the first signs of waking begin to appear. A sleeper shifts position. Another turns slightly beneath the woven covering. Someone exhales deeply and settles again. No one has risen yet. But the village is slowly moving toward wakefulness. The rhythm is familiar. It has happened countless times before. A young child opens their eyes for only a moment, then closes them again. Sleep still feels warm and comfortable. The cool air outside remains distant. For a few more minutes, rest continues. Yet soon the day will begin. And with it will come another collection of lessons, observations, responsibilities, and experiences. For children in ancient Egypt, learning rarely happened in separate places. It happened everywhere. A walk to the river could become a lesson. A trip through the marketplace could become a lesson. Watching bread being prepared could become a lesson. Helping gather reeds could become a lesson. Knowledge lived within daily life. Children absorbed it naturally because they were surrounded by it. The village itself was a teacher. The river was a teacher. The land was a teacher. Even silence could teach patience. Outside, a bird calls again from somewhere near the water. This time another answers more quickly. The sounds are still gentle, but they are becoming more frequent. The natural world is waking. The reeds stir. Small animals begin moving. The sky brightens another shade. The Nile carries the reflections of all these changes. Near a small home, a donkey lifts its head and blinks into the pale morning light. For a moment it stands motionless. Then it lowers its head again. The day has not fully begun. There is still quiet. Still calm. Still a sense of pause. Inside one home, a mother begins to wake. Her eyes remain closed, but sleep has become lighter. Years of routine have taught her body the approach of dawn. Soon there will be bread to prepare, water to gather, children to guide through the early hours of the day. These tasks are familiar. They have become part of life's rhythm. Many of the children sleeping nearby will one day perform similar tasks themselves. Not because anyone suddenly instructs them to do so, but because they will have spent years observing, years helping, years learning. Responsibility arrives gradually, a little at a time. Just as dawn arrives gradually, a little light at a time. The eastern sky now glows softly above the horizon. The outlines of distant fields become easier to see. Narrow pathways emerge from shadow. Storage buildings stand quietly in the growing light. The workshops remain dark for now. The ovens remain cool. The boats remain tied to shore. Everything is waiting for the moment when the village fully awakens. The Nile waits with them. Or perhaps the river does not wait at all. Perhaps it simply continues. Flowing through darkness. Flowing through dawn. Flowing through sunlight. Flowing through generations. Children born beside the river learn this lesson without realizing it. Life moves forward. Slowly sometimes. Quickly at other times. But always forward. The years of childhood feel long while they are being lived. Yet they pass as steadily as the current. A child learns to walk. Then to help. Then to work. Then to guide younger children. Each stage arrives quietly. Almost unnoticed. Much like the morning now spreading across the valley. The cool air remains pleasant. The first faint colors of day begin touching the horizon. The stars continue disappearing one by one. The village stands at the edge of another ordinary day. And beside the timeless waters of the Nile, childhood continues its patient journey, shaped by family, community, work, observation, and the countless small moments that slowly become a life. As the morning light slowly spreads across the Nile Valley, the long night finally begins to release the land from its quiet embrace. The eastern sky glows with soft shades of silver and pale gold. The stars that watched over the village throughout the night fade gently from view, one by one, until only the brightest remain. The river continues its endless journey, now carrying the first light of day upon its surface. The village begins to stir. A door opens somewhere in the distance. A bird calls from the reeds. A fishing boat rocks softly against its rope. Soon the ovens will warm. Soon sandals will cross the dusty paths. Soon voices will fill the morning air. But for one final moment, everything remains calm. The Nile flows quietly beside the fields. The cool air lingers. The earth rests between night and day. And the children sleeping within the village remain exactly where they have always been within the great rhythm of life itself. Their childhood was never easy. Not because the world was cruel. But because life asked much from everyone. From the farmer beneath the sun. From the baker beside the oven. From the fisherman on the river. And from the child learning, little by little, how to belong to the world around them. Responsibility arrived early. Lessons arrived through daily life. Knowledge came through observation, patience, and repetition. Yet within those ordinary days there was also family. There was community. There was the comfort of familiar paths, familiar faces, and familiar routines. There were stories shared in the evening. Moments of shade beneath a wall. Birds lifting from the reeds. The scent of fresh bread. The sound of water moving endlessly through the Nile. The years passed as quietly as the river itself. Children became adults. Adults became elders. New children followed behind them. And still the river flowed. Still the fields welcomed the morning. Still the stars returned each night. The ancient world was never still. Yet it moved with a patience that feels almost timeless. Now the first sunlight reaches the tops of the reeds. It touches the riverbanks. It spreads slowly across the fields. The village awakens. Another day begins. And our long journey through the quiet hours of ancient Egypt comes gently to rest beside the waters of the Nile. The river continues onward. The breeze drifts softly through the reeds. The morning grows brighter. And somewhere beyond the waking village, the endless rhythm of water, earth, sky, and time carries on, calm and unhurried, beneath the warm light of a new day.